Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. Today, we're doing things a little bit differently to usual. This is going to be a live stream rather than being something that is done as a recorded video. I'm intending to then come back and potentially not necessarily edit this particular takedown, but re-record things into a more condensed version. And that will be able to have post-processing of audio and things like that. So basically, that's going to come out a bit better, but it's also less interactive. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun to go through all the news that we got today. My plans are, firstly, that we're going to go through all of the massive announcements that were made. Then after that, we're going to have a look at a couple of little random things that I've picked up, like this cool looking boss fight. And then after that, we'll jump into the patch notes in depth. So, while patch notes are the main focus of this stream, they're not necessarily going to be where we start. Now, we also have an enormous amount of things to get through in this, but I kind of want to start with the overview of features that are associated with the upcoming expansion as well. So we're going to start with the Secrets of the Atlas page, which is pathofexile.com/secrets, having a look through all of the high-level features that are being added, and also a little bit of a dive into some of the items that are teased there. Now, items are getting teased in a bunch of different places, and this is something where it's very easy to miss things. So we're going to look at the things that are teased here, but there are a couple of things that are teased in the press kit as well. If people are interested in downloading the press kit, then you can get it from the very bottom of this page. So there's this download press kit button. It's kind of not the most obvious thing in the world, but it is there. So I'm also going to be responding to things that people raise in chat, but I will be trying to, I don't promise for people who are watching this after the fact, but I will be trying to repeat their questions when I do that. And I'm also going to try and put those into things that, into spots that are a bit of a grouping together that makes sense. The other thing that needs to be mentioned here is that with this being a live stream, there's going to be people that join it late. If you're in this category, you can rewind on YouTube. One of the things I like about streaming to YouTube. So if you're watching this after the fact and you want to catch up, then you can jump to 125, even 150% speed. Or if you're completely okay with listening to someone that talks really fast like this, talking as fast as that song One Week by Bare Naked Ladies, then in that case, then you can jump it up to 200% as well. So you've got that flexibility, stuff that you can't do when we're over on Twitch. All right, now that we've got all of that start matter out of the way, let's start with the Secrets of the Atlas expansion, except to mention that I predicted yesterday they might be dropping Path of Exile 2's 0.2.1 expansion today. It looks like that is actually happening. My guess was right there. So 0.2.1, if you're watching this while it's live, probably in the next hour or so, that's going to be pushed live. As always, I do recommend just waiting 20 minutes to see if there's any absolute catastrophes after it goes live. Have a look at the Path of Exile 2 subreddit if you're interested. But if you're not, then that's fine too. We're going to jump into the Path of Exile 1 news because that's what today is about. So, the core storyline of this is that some originator, and who appears to be ZANA, is going to be causing a bunch of tears in the reality of various worlds within the Atlas. And essentially it looks like ZANA is being kind of held in the Atlas by various things like dread, various negative emotions. These are causing ZANA to be trapped there, and those ultimately the incarnation of dread, and there's two others, they're going to be the pinnacle bosses that are being added. There are 3 new pinnacle bosses that are being added in this expansion. These are a permanent addition to the game, so they're not something that you can only play during the new temporary league. You can play them in standard if you prefer first. And they're going to be pitched to be harder than Uber Elder and Maven, but less difficult than the existing Uber Pinnacle bosses. Kind of feel like maybe in 3.27 they'll give us Uber versions of these that might be pitched at the same level as the existing Uber Pinnacles, or maybe even a level above them. We'll find that one out though. Now, one thing that's really noticeable needs to be mentioned at the moment. There is a new crafting system that I think is going to be completely overshadowed by recombination, because this new crafting system that's being added in this, that's tied to this new content, and Granny Games might have a real problem here if they don't change tack on recombination. They're going to have a real problem because this is oriented around increasing your chances to get high tier mods on an item. But the thing is that getting high tier mods on an item is something recombination has already solved. And in a lot of cases, I think that it's going to be stronger to play around with recombination rather than the new system. Anyways, that is going to be something we'll have to see when we get further in this. But recombination in King's March, for that matter, is going to be back at full power, except it starts fully set up. That's the thing that we've got so far from what's been discussed. All right, so they mention here that there is going to be a new additive endgame storyline. So what this means is that it's a storyline you can pursue, but the old ones are still there. So the Searing Exarch, Eater of Worlds, the Maven, all that stuff is still going to be there, as well as the minor endgame storylines like the Elder Slayers and stuff like that. That stuff's all going to be there as well. There's also going to be a new type of endgame crafting mechanic, which, like we mentioned, focused on getting higher tier mods on existing items and seems to be compatible with other influence types. And also 3 new endgame bosses, a new challenge league, dozens of new unique items, and much more. These new endgame bosses look awesome as well. I'll just put up a screenshot from the fight of the Incarnation of Dread. This is a pretty full-on moment in that fight, it looks, and this was found in the press kit. So, what have we got here? We've got someone who is playing bullet hell dodge, whilst also dealing with these waves that, I don't know if these waves propagate through the arena or if they're just in a fixed location and there to kind of limit your amount of space that you've got to maneuver in, and also to force movement, because the best way to deal with a bullet hell ability like this is to not move very much. Just make the smaller side steps you can, and that's going to be a pretty full-on encounter there. I don't know how deadly these abilities are going to be. I can't imagine that those are going to be one-shot projectiles, but I also can't imagine that they're crazy forgiving either. So I think, imagine these to be somewhere between a Shaper Ball and a Searing Exarch Ball. The meatballs from the Searing Exarch that are really deadly, but that you can build to survive, versus the Shaper Balls that you probably do survive being hit by 1, but being hit by 2 is really bad news on squishy builds. That, I think, is probably where they're going for with that, but I could be wrong. Maybe it's something where it's just really hard to dodge all these things and you do expect to get hit by a few of them, and that the idea of dodging is that that's a partial mitigation, that you move around a little bit, but that basically this is going to be a phase where you take a bunch of damage and you try to get through with a minimal amount of damage as possible. All that we'll see, but there's definitely some exciting looking new bosses there. So, there is a new endgame storyline that centers around a character named Egon Caesarius. Caesarius, of course, being the same surname as the Shaper and also ZANA. Now, this guy is an intelligent man of mysterious heritage and he's trying to discover his origins, but in doing so, he has found more than he bargained for. In his investigation, he has encountered distortions of reality. Occasionally, he catches glimpses of a young girl through the rifts, ZANA. He knows her as the daughter of the great inventor who shaped the Atlas as we know it. These tears in reality, he's discovered, are actually threads of memory distorted and made real by the Atlas. Egon is adamant to discover what is causing this and to save ZANA. So basically, he wants to save ZANA. We probably shouldn't do that, because everyone that we save from the Atlas ends up becoming a monster, but who knows what's going to happen there. Nothing could possibly go wrong with this storyline. Now, in the Atlas, you're going to encounter these things called threads of consciousness. Those of you that play PathOfExile 1 a bunch will be familiar with the concept of Atlas memories, added in Calandra League, and some of them have been misses, some of them have been hits. So basically, that's something that has been extended on a little bit here. And I'm just going to take 1 sec while I quickly try to address something that is a tech recommendation YouTuber making here. Okay, that can't be fixed in the... That is not fixable, the suggestion that they're making there, so I can't do that. That's all right. Sorry about that. There's going to be a bunch of little distractions like that while I'm doing a live stream. So essentially, this appears like it's going to be that concept of memory threads done a bit better. And the idea here is going to be that you will find these threads of consciousness when you're mapping, and they will start a memory line. This is going to be the introduction to this system, but you will then also be able to find maps that are ZANA influenced. And these ZANA influenced maps are going to have, well, they're going to drop rare, they're tier 16, they're going to have access to the mods that are tier 17 exclusive. So that's going to both increase their rewards and also increase the danger that they've got on them. But additionally, they're going to have access to a few new juicing mechanics as well. So a whole bunch of stuff that's going on with that. And you can see one example of this in action here. This is one of these Atlas memory line type things. Starting here, traversing through to here, and then this is a special encounter. This will have a map boss that will be augmented substantially, be massively changed. And if you do defeat this map boss, then you will receive a access token to one of the pinnacle bosses that are being added. So that is the sort of high level overview of what we're going to get. The exact details, there's probably a few things we're getting slightly wrong because we've just seen a bit of a intro from Grinding Your Games that, you know, it's the state of the game there as it is at the moment, but there's often nuances that you don't think of that are important to cover. The other thing that's worth noting, I think this image here shows it, just to confirm that, no, this is what a memory tear looks like. Something that comes up is that when you defeat a map boss in one of the earlier maps, you'll be able to, so this is like the first map, the second map, the third map. When you do that, you'll then be able to permanently influence the other maps that are in this chain, something akin to the Eldritch Altar system. So there's a whole bunch of information on that will be worked out over time and how to optimize it and things like that. There's also, I think this is actually the image in question. It is not the image in question. We don't have one of the image in question here. So these are going to also be accompanied by monsters that have got what I'm calling gommage petals after the Expedition 33 concept of the gommage. That's where this immediately this aesthetic is just tied to that in my mind now. But basically these monsters that you'll be investigating and attacking, they're going to have additional monsters that are imbued with memory petals. Memory petals will then cause those to transfer to you. So this, again, memory petals is exactly the way that Expedition 33 starts, is someone being turned into these. They'll transfer onto you and then they will give you some sort of boost. Now these boosts vary quite a lot. There's some of them that cause you to gain increased combat power. There's some that cause monsters to become more challenging and more rewarding. And there's a whole bunch of things that can go on there as well. Now, as you progress further into the thread of memories, maps can have more than one memory, and thus you can have more than one of these powerful abilities. There's the new pinnacle bosses, and these are what they look like. We already had that Incarnation of Dread image. This is one of the three, another of the three, and this is just one of the memories that will lead you into them. Now, these will be pinnacle bosses that you'll then be able to get access to newer versions of ZANA's memories, so there's basically a whole bunch of things where you'll fight a mini boss and then that will give you access to the pinnacle bosses there. Now, there's a whole bunch of rewards that are going to be dropping here. Some of these are really interesting, some are not. So we start out with Prospero's Protection is an item that's listed here. And this one I cannot see much in the way of use for. So Armor from Equipped Shield is doubled. That's legit strong, but it's got a drawback on it. And the other drawback, the hidden drawback of just using a ring that doesn't have very many stats, is that you're giving up all those other stats you could have there. Ultimately, the fact that you can double the armor on a ring, on a shield that might have 3,000 armor, that's good, but the whole package is just not there, I don't think. And then, however, we have Enmity's Embrace. This thing is phenomenal. Fair warning, do not catalyze this for fire. You want to catalyze this for attributes. You might want to catalyze it for life potentially, but do not catalyze this for fire. So 55% reduced fire resistance. This is multiplicative. So this means that effects that would modify your fire resistance, and this includes both the -60 from act penalties, but also all sorts of other items that you get, all passive trees and things like that, they're going to have a 55% reduced effect on you. This is the same type of thing that you get on Annihilating Light, the staff that drops from the Uber Searing Exarch. However, this thing has the crazy text, damage penetrates fire resistance equal to your overcap fire resistance. So if you can get your fire resistance up to, say, 175, in conjunction with that horrible drawback of 55% reduced fire resistance, then suddenly, it turns out you're playing this on a character that has 90% fire resist. So that's 85% fire res. You've got 85% fire pen. That's massive. This is going to be really, really, really solid. So yeah, this is fantastic here. And I feel like this could be a chase item. I could be wrong, but this feels like it's a chase item that probably comes from a pinnacle boss. Interesting point being raised about Prospero's protection. People asking, does this interact with Shield Crush? I think the answer is no. Now we have the crafting systems that come up here. Orb of Remembrance randomizes the number of memory strands on a normal equipment item. Orb of Unraveling consumes all memory shards on an item to upgrade the tier of explicit modifiers based on the number of strands consumed. I think this one will be very rare in comparison, like Tainted Divine Teardrop level. And the Orb of Intention. These are essentially orbs that interact with the new crafting system. Now, the new crafting system is powerful, but I feel it is weaker than Recombination. So I feel like there's a lot of things here that are going on that are just kind of going to be outshone, because the way that these influences work, these memory strands, what they do is this here is an example of a bell. Notice it's got memory strands 40 on it. What that means is that when you add a mod to this item, that can be added through an Exalted Orb, it can be added through things that reforge the item, like a Chaos Orb. Those are going to be biased towards higher tiers. However, that bias is going to come at the expense of losing memory strands. So this is going to mean that you're going to often want to consolidate mods together using these memory strands. But ultimately, I do agree, actually, Lewis in chat is making a good point here that recombination at the top end is something that you can't really do for a while. This is definitely going to be more accessible than recombination, but ultimately I don't think it's going to be an endgame crafting system except for certain items. There'll be specific cases where it'll work. And I do think that bases will keep their memory strands after recombination, but ultimately recombination kind of lets you bypass the benefits of strands, because the benefit of strands is that you sacrifice them in order to bias towards higher tier mods. Recombination can be an item editor. It can just generate a 6 perfect mod item with limits. So that's the system that I think is going to come up there. One thing that's come up in chat with the memory system is, how does this work with respect to favorite maps and things like that? And the answer is that while you're starting out, you're going to be forced to run whatever tile sets they come on. But once you've done the pinnacle bosses, it seems like you'll be able to have a bit more agency. At that point, you'll start having more agency over which maps are dropping influenced. Exact details still to come, but I think the intention they're going for here is that tier 17s give you no agency over the tile sets that you run. The core atlas gives you a lot of agency over the tile sets you want to run, but these things that they're actually terming them tier 16.5 internally, the ZANA influence maps. These are going to give you some influence, but not as much as you get with 16s. Now, we have a couple of other cool unique items. This Wine of the Prophet item is something that was showcased briefly in Granny Games video, and it's got a bunch of cool stuff with it, but it's a really complex item, and it felt like it could be really strong to me, but it's going to depend upon the exact pool of effects that it's got. So when you use it, you gain a particular buff for 20 seconds. That buff is thematically tied to a divination card, but we don't know how rare these are. So there is a Doctor Divination card that you can roll with it, and that does give you Headhunter for 20 seconds. And honestly, that could potentially be quite common as well. But we'll have to find out exactly all the other possibilities. That said, I think this flask, if the outcomes on it are remotely good, I think this could be phenomenally strong in the context of someone who is using it as a on ultra juice maps, just for really fast clear speed, because a gold flask is already good on those anyway. So if you're running a mechanic that involves killing a lot of monsters really fast, Breach comes to mind, Abyss comes to mind, Expedition potentially comes to mind. You could, not that Expedition, it's not fast to set up, but once it's rolling, it's going. I think it could be really good. And yeah, someone's pointing out, I wonder if we'll see a Pathfinder running 5 of these. Depends on how it stacks. Lastly, we have Starcaller. Now, Starcaller was shown off. It's a two-handed weapon that has pretty abysmal base stats. It's got a bit of IPD, but I misread it. I was assessing it as though it was a one-hander originally, and I was like, oh, the damage on this is just okay. And then I realized, oh wait, no, it's a two-hander. It does have 56% of weapon physical damage added as extra damage, but it's only of one random element. And one random element is harder to scale than tri-element. However, we also pick up this level 20 Starfall on melee critical strike, which seems to be a physical alternative to something like Firestorm of Pelting. That's from the video that was shown of it. Or Whispering Ice. So it's something that it does a lot. Whether it's good enough or not is open question. I feel like GGG tend to make their build enabling unique items weaker than they need to be. And the reason there is that when a build enabling unique item is bad, the whole build is bad, so you don't build into it. Whereas if the build enabling unique item, if the build is actually reasonably strong, then there's some sort of pull into it. I feel like there's a couple of items like Replica Elbron's Warpath where they go too far the other way. Replica Elbron's Warpath would still be fine if it was 25% worse, but most of the weapon slot items like this, they're so worried about outclassing rares the way that Starforge used to outclass rares, and honestly that was bad too, that they have bent too far in the opposite direction at the moment. So the does cool stuff unique weapons mostly are misses, but we'll wait and see with Starcaller if there's anything good about it. If it's quieter than Ice Storm, that's a win. Yeah, Ice Storm definitely not something that you want while you're blasting. Well, unless you're blasting music. If you're blasting music, it's alright. Now, everything we've talked about so far is the changes to the core game. And note that all of that is just a high-level feature overview of the changes that 326 is bringing to the normal endgame. However, there is also Mercenaries of Trathus as a league. This is going to be the challenge league for this, and it's going to give you access to a Diablo 2 style NPC that will fight alongside you and that will potentially die for you many times, although you can raise them from the dead in exchange for gold. So if they do go splat, then you can bring them back. Now, the Mercenaries, one important thing to note about them is that they count as half a player for the purposes of zone scaling, which is really important to keep in mind. These can be played as aura bots, they can be played as curse bots, but they actually apparently can function reasonably well if you focus on doing something that synergizes with them. They actually can fight, apparently, as well. And the other thing is they're kind of like Rogue Exiles in that you'll have to fight them at various points as well. And when you start them, you will get into a fight with them, and then only once you subdue them, then you get to choose between a number of things. They have apparently some code of conduct whereby anytime they get challenged, they have to accept it. And this challenge can be either your wager of your gold against their items, your wager of your gold against their service, a bunch of other things. Now, there's a couple of things that exist in their items because their items start already equipped and they also have skills already equipped. Some of these are things you can't get anywhere else. So, when you do fight one of these mercenaries, you can wager that one of their items becomes yours, and that can include their skill gems. Or alternately, you can just hire them as a minion. And it looks like, and there's also another option, there is another option, which is to exile them. When you exile one, you won't get any similar NPCs for the next 10 maps. That's the way that I interpret that. Now, you can also, definitely use them as an aura bot if you want. You can use the Animate Guardian stereotypical items as well, and they probably are a bit tougher. Animate Guardian is getting massive changes in this patch as well. I'll get to that when we get to the patch notes in a bit, because we do have patch notes there too. So, one of these is going to fight with you, and you can then modify them around. You can set it up so that they've got their items, or you can overwrite them with your own. And also there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can do, but mostly you're going to want to just occasionally change out an item that they've got that's egregiously bad, fix some crushing problem with their itemization, like maybe they've got only -10 fire res, and then you've got to get some fire res somewhere. There's a bunch of things like that that you can potentially do, and then get them functioning. The other thing though, they cannot level up. So what this means in practice probably is that the best companions are going to come from tier 17 maps. They have attributes for item requirement concerns. I do not know about that. There's a bunch of stuff that's not really clear. They do have their own passive trees, although those are invisible to us. Or when we say passive trees, like they'll get nodes, they'll get bonuses as they level up that will be in line with what a player would get from the passive tree. So I guess we shall see on this. Yeah, people are saying in chat that sockets and links don't seem to matter, and I think that this supports that. So here we've got a green, red, red setup, and this gear set has no green, red, red, but that ensnaring arrow is a green double red there. Now, the swapping out of skills, I don't think you can swap out skills, but you can get their skills if they've got an unusual one. So these are some of the items that are only available from Trathan Mercenaries, and there's some really interesting and some really mediocre stuff here. Why don't we start with the best of them? These Assassin's Mitts are not a good item, but they have one mod on them that is crazy good. Not for every build, it's very, very niche, but skills used by your traps and mines chain 2 additional times. There are so many situations in which this is phenomenal. So, Power Siphon Mines, which is getting nerfed in this patch, but is still probably going to be good. That can be used with this, but the main thing that jumps out to me is Lightning Trap. Lightning Trap has been kind of serviceable for a while, but it's missing any damage projection to make it extraordinary, and this is going to be fantastic as a way of enhancing that. So skills used by your traps and mines chain 2 additional times is fantastic there. The other mods on this are pretty bad, but that's fine. Like, recombination exists, so you can probably pull this off it, put it onto an item that's got memory strands on it, and then fill it out with other mods. Or at a higher budget, you can potentially just try and get this mod into something absolutely outstanding on its own. Exsanguinate's been mentioned by a few people. Now, Exsanguinate is getting buffed. The reason I don't call out Exsanguinate is that Exsanguinate already has chain, doesn't it? Or, oh no, it's Exsanguinate of Transmission that's got chain. Exsanguinate is the one that needs chain. Yeah, Exsanguinate's fantastic with this. Actually, yep, you're right. Sideways, thanks for that. Exsanguinate doesn't natively chain, but it can gain it. Basically, any skill that benefits from chain, but that natively has no chaining, really gains a lot here. The other thing is that your mercenaries will use these as well. Now, it's going to be an open question how you would go about getting this on, finding a mercenary that's got this. I feel like you'd have to be running higher tier mods, so higher tier maps. But one thing I will point out, this requires level 58. Requires level 58 means that none of the mods that are on the item can have a minimum level to drop that is higher than 73. 73 is the highest it can be, because if there was an item here, if there was a mod here that required level 80 to spawn, then the minimum level of this item would be 64. And so that means that everything here can exist on 73 and down. Howlcrack is next. This one's cool. Non-instant war cries you use yourself have no cooldown, so as long as it's one that takes time to use, you can just spam it as much as you want. War cries have an additional life cost equal to 15% of your maximum life. Ouch. War cry skills have increased AoE, and then just some basic stats. I think this is one of those things that is going to find a use in conjunction with, I think it's Infernal Cry, the one that causes monsters that are affected by it to fire explode. There'll be like a few things that this is useful for. You could use this in conjunction with Enduring Cry as well, in order to get yourself a bunch of extra endurance charges. So as long as it's not instant, you get this ability to spam them. The thing is that you're standing still for a while to use it, so it's definitely something that's quite an opportunity cost to use. Corrupting Fever is another thing that could use this. Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, definitely Shout Barbarian and a Mercenary, very Diablo 2 influence there. We have this here, this belt. Minions have 20% increased CDR on a rare item. Now this one requires level 61. I need to check the mod in question there. Increased flask mana recovery rate. I'm just going to check that in another window just to see what the requirement is on that. Whether that explains the very, very high... minimum level on this. So this is a belt mod. Jewelry belts. The mod in question. The exact text of this mod is mana flask recovery rate 37%. And what do we have here currently? Flask. Okay, that is normally a level 77 mod. So a 77 would be either a 61 or a 62. So 61, yeah, okay. That is correct. That's a level 77 mod to roll. And that means that we can't say anything about the minion CDR mod, what its minimum level is. Definitely can be used on a bunch of stuff. Like people are saying, Holy Relic of Conviction would definitely want this. And you would also want to, again, take advantage of how busted recombination is to move this onto a Stygian Vice, because Stygian Vices are slightly better than a cloth belt for some funny reason. Or in some rare situations, you might use a Crystal or Vanguard belt. But now, even Vanguard belts, Stygian Vices pretty much always look better, because even if you want the dexterity, not dexterity, the armor and evasion rating, you can get those theoretically on a duel. So yeah, basically, there's going to be a real problem with recombination being still around at its current full power, although they are talking about increasing the gold and dust cost. Unless they do something massive there, the new thread system isn't going to be all that relevant. People are just going to transfer items off with recombination and do all that sort of stuff. Now we have Stormcall of Trathus, and we actually have some footage of it being used, or not footage, but an image of what this thing looks like. This looks cool. This is a really, really dark take on Stormcall, and it's basically really blood-drenched. It's cool. So this image is from the press kit, if you're wondering where it's come from. And basically, this is going to work like Stormcall, but have the additional rider of dumping a bunch of Fizz degen ground behind. So physical damage over time, and it also, the Stormcall deals physical damage instead of dealing damage that is lightning. So it's a different skill, and ultimately these are like their transfigured gems, but they're transfigured gems that don't come out of the lab. Instead, they come out of the Trathus encounters. These are only going to come from the special ones, I think they're called the Nobles, the Trathan Noble ones, which are going to stand out. They're going to be a bit rarer, and they're going to be more powerful. It is correct, actually. Vayfire is saying there that there's not firm details about recombination power, but ultimately the indication that was given is that it seems like it's probably back at close to full power, and that it won't be, they're not expecting to massively nerf it. And as I said, I think that's going to really hurt with this new thread system is just going to get completely outshone, because it does the same things that recombination does. Recombination simply does them better. Spectral Shield Throw of Trathus is the other one here, and this is something that fires an enormous amount of additional projectiles, which is really got to be tested out. This feels like it could be good, but just needs to be theory crafted, and ultimately I think this is one we need to see in practice. I want to see some gameplay footage of this before I decide whether it's something I want to build around. But essentially, you are looking for something that has a shield that's armor or evasion rating based. And also, the other question is, does this count as a spectral? Does this count as a spectral shield throw because it's sort of not exactly called spectral shield throw? I think there's still that duel for it, the critical strike one. Then we have the Mercenaries Challenge League, which is coming with this awesome armor set. I feel like this is the best armor set they've given away in a long time, and I could be wrong on that. Speaking of going back to the Spectral Shield Throw of Trathus, Package in chat is mentioning that that is used in the reveal trailer, so I must have missed that one. That is definitely going to happen. I'm definitely not infallible. I will certainly miss a bunch of things like that. So I will have a look at that after we finish this stream. And then that seems like it'll be something that I can then decide whether it's worth theory crafting around or not. This is, I think, the best armor set that they've had in a long time as a freebie. This feels like it's something that's really at the top end of their design. At least that's my take on it. I like sometimes having the glowy ones, sometimes having the not glowy ones, and this is definitely the not glowy side of things. But those shoulder pad things, if that's an eye as it looks like, which I can't tell because you can't rotate the character, I really want to rotate them, sort of 20 degrees and have a look at whether that is indeed an eye that's coming out of the shoulder there. If it is, that'll be fantastic. And these MTX will start coming online at 4 challenges and then work up to probably 35 or 36 or 38. That'll be the exact numbers there. Now, King's March. Okay, so King's March is going core. However, it starts fully built. So Settlers League was about building it. Now it's going to start fully built. I think there's going to be a couple of problems with this because unless they nerf shipment rewards for farms are going to feel mandatory to keep running all the time. Because it's just one of those mechanics that as long as you're able to keep feeding gold into them, farms, they are so lucrative that you kind of feel like if you're running content that doesn't work well with farms, they did mention that they're going to do a bit of an overhaul of the amount of gold that various content gives you. But if you're running content like Heist that is a bit gold starved or Delve, you're going to feel like you're missing out. And so that's just going to create this messy situation. Now, if they can balance it so that playing the game is fine, like that you get gold from all aspects of the game, I think it'll be better. But I'm hoping that they remove mirror shards. Ultimately, I hope they remove mirror shards from shipments, and I hope they remove Hinakora's locks from the map device. If they do that, then everything in King's March is fine. There's a reason to do it all. There's all of the stuff there is fine, but it's not going to feel like it's completely punishing not to do it, if that makes sense. The other thing is that in King's March, if your gold income is a couple of million gold a week, then you want to be sending off shipments. If your gold income is double-digit millions a week, then you also want to be running your map devices as well. But the map devices are definitely weaker. Now, we have something that's really substantial here, and that is these rune graphs. These are going to be an additional type of tattoo. These are replacing the power runes and the like from Settlers League. So all those power runes, Calgarian runesmithing is gone, but these are an increase in the options that are available for tattoos. So there are tattoos that affect notables. There's not very many of those in the game now, and they're very, very rare, the ones that exist. There's tattoos that affect small nodes. Those are the most common ones, the attribute small nodes, that is. And there are also rune graphs which affect mastery passives. These do things that are really powerful. I actually do not like the rune graph of the Solwick here, mostly because it kind of encourages a boring playstyle. It's like, okay, I want to fight Cirrus. I'm not sure I can beat it yet. I'm going to walk into the instance. I'm then going to go and get myself a drink. And then I'm going to come back. And then I'm going to come back with full Vile Souls as a result of that. I feel like this should only apply when a monster is in your presence or something. This is very strong though. This is like really good. You definitely will be able to pick up a bunch of masteries you don't want. And so this is something to really keep in mind. This one's super strong. This one, Runegraft of Blasphemy, 30% chance to curse non-cursed enemies with a random hex on hit. Most of the time, I'm not sold on this. It doesn't work very well with Hex Blast by the time you can get it. Like Hex Blast, before you can get this, it would be fine, you'd use it, but you can also get Dread Arc early in progression, and once you are at endgame, you'll be able to have access to this, but 30% probably isn't enough, unless you can allocate 4 of these. If you can put 4 of them, it's really, really strong. And I don't know. If you can put down 4 of these, then suddenly that becomes really, really potent. Or even 3. Like the 4th one's not so hot. People are mentioning, yes, this is Vile Souls. This is not Soul Eater stacks. It's that, like, I'm assuming that you're using a Vile Gem if you're using this. Oh, only one Runegraft of any given type can be in use at a time. Thank you, Chris, in chat there for that. I had missed that because that stuff down the bottom, this is one of those things that comes up a bit with PathOfExile. There's parts of the text description that the game trains you to not pay attention to because they're normally something that's not rules text, they're normally flavor text. And so this is actually only one. So there's no using 4 of these. Thank you for pointing that out. There will be things I missed, but that is something that comes up a bunch where you don't look at a particular area of text because it usually doesn't matter, but then this time it does actually matter. Runegraft of the Nova Mark, though, this one is phenomenal. This is absolutely amazing. So you can play, at least I assume that this will work, based on past precedents of Astral Projector. You can play Shockwave Totem, and when you're fighting trash monsters, you can just place the Shockwave Totem at their feet. But when you want to fight something that's tankier and potentially more dangerous, and you want to place your totems in safer locations, you can put those totems in safer locations. Then you can go and apply a mark to the marked target, to the boss that you're wanting to kill, and your totems will then basically fire at that specific spot. So this is a replacement for Astral Projector that they both work in the same way. Not exactly the same, but pretty similar. But you do need to mark targets. So sometimes you're going to prefer the old status quo. Sometimes note that it targets the marked target rather than your cursor as well. So they're different. They're different. But ultimately, this is just an alternative way to play Shockwave Totem that I think is worthwhile having. And someone's saying in chat there that they think that this will have a really favorable interaction on a Deadeye using Pyroclast Mines. So is Pyroclast Mines considered to be a Nova? I'm not sure it is. I want to just check that quickly before I say that that is the case. POE Pyroclast Mines. What I'm looking for here is whether it has the Nova tag on it, which is, it does. It does have the Nova tag. I don't think it did. Okay, that's cool. So yes, that is definitely something to play around with there. And now Betrayal is next, and this is something that's been discussed a little bit already, but there's quite a lot that's happening to Betrayal. Basically, Katarina is now going to be itemized and is going to be board agnostic. So you can fight Katarina separately, and when you complete a side area... Now, we'll get into the patch notes in a bit, because there are a couple of things hidden in the patch notes that aren't in this high-level overview. And when we get to the patch notes proper, that will clarify some of the things that will come up here. But these Syndicate Medallions allow you to fight Katarina, and you can do this with... Like, there's a bunch of things that you can do when you're doing this to... Yeah, let me just change my... I've just lost my train of thought. And this is one of the things that happens when I'm streaming. I can't edit things like this out. I often will have a bit of a brain freeze when I'm recording a video. So the Syndicate encounters, when you run them in maps, they're going to be mostly as they are now. You're then going to get to the end of the map, build up your safe house intel, run the safe house. Sometimes they're going to drop a Syndicate Medallion when you complete them, and that will then allow you to then fight Katarina. Now, I think that the Syndicate Medallions are just going to ignore the current State of Betrayal board. They definitely do not scramble it. Now, we have the following things that are going to drop here. Veiled Exalted Orb. This drops from Katarina, probably with the same drop rate as she's got now for the Veiled Orb, and it does the same thing that the Veiled Orb does now. Veiled Chaos Orb. These are coming back, and they're going to come from safe house bosses. So it's not going to be Ashling specifically, at least it doesn't seem like that. It's going to be something that will just basically be the reward that you get from any of the different safe houses. Then we have the All Flames. I'll come to those in a sec. The important thing to note with the Syndicate Medallion is that I don't think it matters what your board state is when you fight Katarina now. I don't think she's going to have all those additional rewards she used to have that you fought there, because you're now getting these other things, which are All Flame members. All Flame members, I think, replace the ability to go and plunder all of the safe houses at once. That's my understanding. Now, All Flame members were something that existed in Necropolis League. They were multiplicative with Scarabs, and they were multiplicative with a whole bunch of other things. That's the reason that Necropolis League was the highest loot that has ever existed in PathOfExile's history, considerably eclipsing the amount of loot that was dropping with top-end strategies in Affliction. It was very, very clunky to run, however. A lot of these All Flame members, they only came from bosses, and they didn't even have a 100% drop rate there. So, like, if you wanted to get, for instance, the one that was tied to the Shaper, which was the best of the lot, you had to run the Shaper a whole bunch of times. And ultimately, it meant that top-end farmers were reliant upon having a horde of minions. Now, when I say minions, I mean people that they're trading with. There was a huge amount of trading that was necessary in order to make these work. Now, these are going to come specifically from Betrayal. They are not going to be as crazy as they were in Necropolis, and the reason for that is they take a Scarab slot now. These ones take a Scarab slot, and that's an important thing that is going to be different to what's worked in the past. Now, all of that said, they're probably going to be more lucrative than any Scarab, and they're also going to be at the rarer end. Essentially, they are functionally Scarabs, but they come from the Betrayal encounter. So, what happens when you've got a rare consumable that comes from a particular boss fight, and that consumable is wanted in enormous numbers? The answer is that the boss fight becomes much more lucrative to run. So with all of this in mind, I think this is the best league that's ever existed to run Betrayal in. This is going to be by far the most lucrative thing early on until people work out the crazy juice strategies here. And the reason for I say that is that there will be demand for Veiled Chaos, there'll be demand for Veiled Exalts, and that will be strong all along. Early on, there'll be demand for Betrayal exclusive uniques, some of which are getting substantial buffs in this patch, like Bitterbind Point, for instance, is getting changes so that it now has Spectre-oriented mods that are exclusive to it. And then on top of that, you'll also have the All Flame members as something in there as that will become more valuable the longer the league goes on. So much the same way that in the 3.18, I think it was, era, the Shaper was super lucrative for players to run, mostly because like veteran players didn't really want to do it, and there was just a whole heap of demand for the consumables, the Shaper drop, which was the fragments, the ones that would then get you access to the Uber Elder encounter. That's going to be the case here again, I think. So yeah, do I think the All Flames will be allowed to be traded on the currency exchange? I strongly expect they will be. This is exactly the sort of thing that would be. They're stackable, and I also think that the Syndicate Medallion will be based upon the precedent of the Audience with the King being able to be stacked on there. So there's going to be a whole lot of work also to find out exactly what goes on with all of the Betrayal rewards as well. The Safe House rewards. That's something that's come up in chat there. Quality of life features, everything here was already known. And then we have the typical ads that Grinding Gear Games put in for their new MTX, one of which looked really cool. One of them was amazing, one of them was less so. That was my thoughts on the packs there. So, let's jump over the patch notes now. That is all of the precursor stuff. I'm just going to refresh at this point. Oh no, I should not have refreshed that. Okay, how long have they got this down for maintenance? I don't know. It was a really... Oh, that was not my smartest... Oh, here it comes. It's back. That was funny. That was really funny. Yeah, so Gerald is asking, just clarification, does Katarina lead to every safe house? I think the answer is no. I think that is not going to be the case anymore. We'll know that for certain day one. The really funny thing about that there was that, like, that refresh actually was, was me going, I better just have a quick refresh to see if anything has changed, because that always does tend to change during the day of release. But I've then gone and done that, forgetting that I should probably not do that. Okay, let's go through the stuff here. So firstly, the core features here, essentially here, all of this section is what we've already been discussing. The first couple of sections of the patch notes are always just the high-level features that we were discussing when we were looking through this entire section. So nothing really new in this part of the patch notes. So that's part of the reason that we go through those first. When there's not as many people watching, once we get to the patch notes proper, we can then dig into the things that are more substantial. Now, before we go into everything else, I will mention, in terms of the top-end builds of 325, we have Trickster Lightning Strike is getting about 16 different nerfs targeting at it, which is exactly the most sensible thing imaginable. Like, basically no individual nerf is crushing. The Trickster Ascendancy is still very good. Trickster is getting nerfed. Polymath is going from 3% more damage per mastery to 2% more damage per mastery. Now that sounds like, oh, Polymath is losing a third of its power, which it kind of is. The thing is that the builds that take Polymath are going from having 127% base damage to 118% base damage. This is like 8% less damage on the Trickster Ascendancy, and you also have the option that if you don't want it, you can just not take Polymath anymore and take something else instead. But even if you do stay spec the same way, that's what you're losing. Escape Artist, the numbers on it are being nerfed substantially, and Escape Artist will still be strong though because it got such a huge buff with the 325 changes to bases. Escape Artist is not a must-take anymore, but it's pretty good. And now, going through the other things that are being added here, we have Focus Channeling is being added. This is a new gem, and I think it's the only non-Triarthan gem that's being added here. But it's going to support channeling skills you cast yourself, significantly empowering the damage of supported skills the longer they are cast. Note that this is spells only, so sorry to those of you that have a liking of a Cyclone, while also increasing the cost the longer that they're being cast. Cannot modify the skills of minions. So, Divine Ire. This is basically a Divine Ire support gem. I hate Divine Ire. It was kind of fun for a little while, but it ended up being one of those skills that gives started causing me wrist pain when I was playing it for too long. I'm not going to play it again no matter how good it gets, and I think the same applies to any channeled skill. I'm not going to play them no matter how good they are, but if you are interested in playing a channeling skill, then that's going to be something that is going to be there. Shaper's Exalted Orb and Elder Exalted Orb were already mentioned. Now, we have the new other orbs, which have also already been mentioned. These are going to be the things that are related to the new crafting system that's going to be outshone by recombination unless they change that. And so that's... Oh, text about this... No, text about this is on the screen. Rubik, you are... Sorry, I just got a little bit of a near heart attack there when Rubik mentioned that I probably had the wrong screen up. I was talking about this. I should probably highlight things as I'm talking about them though. So the new currency orbs that are tied to the new crafting system, unfortunately, these are probably going to be outshone by recombination existing because the new crafting system is oriented towards raising the average tier of mods that are on items, and recombination simply does that better at the end. And that's the first sort of thought there. Now, 20 new uniques, or over 20, some of which can only be obtained from mercenaries. 5 new divination cards could be interesting. Divination cards are one of those things that can have a huge impact on the game. There's also a few divination cards that are getting overhauled in this. Ones that got bricked by 325 changes. So they've been out of the game for a year. Those are coming back. There'll be a little bit more on that in a sec. You can now pause the game by bringing up anything like the passive skill tree. And also, Pinnacle bosses will not allow this to happen. However, we have the big changes that some of these changes are fantastic here. Like, this one is great. The Rogue Harbor can now be accessed through a pin on the world map once you've been there once. And you can also do enter/heist in various areas. But more importantly, the maximum number of players in an instance of the Rogue Harbor has been halved. So, the Rogue Harbor, the worst thing about heist, at least for someone like me that likes the heist mechanic, you know, don't like the heist mechanic, this isn't going to fix that. But if you do like the mechanic, but you always find that you are crashing too much there, this should address all of those issues there. It's also, as been pointed out in chat, 50% less goblin bans, so less of an awesome soundtrack that you can, or actually it's a less multiplier to the amount of people that you can influence with your taste in music there. So this is one that's definitely a big improvement there. Now, a message is now output to chat whenever the Nameless Seer or a Reflecting Mist randomly spawns in a map. This is something that's really useful because it's like these things are meant to be a big reward when they pop up. Not necessarily a big reward, but at least an exciting moment where you think, okay, I've won the first part of the role. I may or may not win the second part of the role. It'd be like if some radio station had a contest where they said, all right, we're going to pick a random birthday. And if that happens to be your birthday, then you get some amount of money if you're the first person to call in. when they say March, let's say that your birthday happened to be March 11, then they say out March, and you're like, oh, I've won the first roll. Do I win the second roll? And then they go and announce 8. The Nameless Seer and Reflecting Mist are kind of like that moment where you've got the right month, but you haven't necessarily got the right date yet, and you'll find out whether you've got the right date or not later. So the Nameless Seer has a chance of being a Mage Blood, the Relicash Boots, although Relicash Boots are being nerfed finally, and Reflecting Mist is something that also has a potential, can give you the itemized Reflecting Mist, and it can also just sometimes, not very often, but sometimes it can be crazy, like crazily good items as well. So that being in chat is just going to mean that those times that you win the first die roll, but probably not the second, are going to be more obvious to you. And then we have guild officers can now cancel unaccepted invitations to their guild, which is something that's important because I think they take up a guild spot. So that's something that is a big improvement there. One thing that's interesting, focus channeling has just been mentioned by Muriel there, that this actually works on Flame Blast, and I think that's a good point. Unfortunately, only on things you cast yourself, but Flame Blast is usually cast yourself. That is a good point, actually. I'd forgotten Flame Blast existed. That's a really good example of where you would want to use this. There's also one of the Transfig gems, I think, is like there's some really oddball, interesting transfigs of Flame Blast as well. Flame Blast of Contraction, Flame Blast of Celerity. They do a bunch of things, and yeah. Okay, in-game changes. Players can no longer gain or lose experience in the following areas: the Maven, the Searing Exarch, the Eater of Worlds, the Uber Elder, and also Absence of Value of Meaning is also the Elder. Crux of Nothingness, so that is, what do you call it? King in the Mist. Eye of the Storm for Cirrus. Polaric Void. That's really good, actually, for leveling. Seething Chime. Sacred Grove, interestingly, I assume that's when you, that's only when you go in to fight Ashabi herself. The Shaper's Realm and the Maven's Crucible. Oh, they did the Maven's Crucible. I did not think they were going to do the Maven's Crucible on that. That's really good. So, no longer being able to gain XP doesn't matter because the amount of XP that you got from killing pinnacle bosses was nothing. It's important to note, this does not include the Cortex. This does not include the Alluring Abyss. Those are probably the most important ones that are not included. It also doesn't include any of the Breach Domains, but you wouldn't want that to happen. So, yeah, that's substantial. Oh, wow. Atlas memories are being removed. I didn't actually notice this when I was flicking through here before. Existing items will be deleted on login. Existing memories on your Atlas will be removed. So they are doing that. They're totally changing it with the new system. Introduce some new red tier Karak missions that you might recognize from previous Atlas memories. So things like the cascading strongboxes and stuff like that. Presumably this is going to remain in the game, but in a more limited form, and it's going to be tied to Karak master missions. This will be interesting. I feel like there's a bunch of cool stuff these did that weren't necessarily strong enough because you couldn't juice them all that much. Breach splinters are going to be collected for you automatically, dropped at your location when the breach concludes. If you're in a party, multiple stacks will drop. They'll be randomly allocated, and you'll see a small notification above your character when one of them is collected, similar to gold. Commonly found scarabs. Now, I don't know what they mean by commonly found here. There are 5 rarity tiers of scarabs. This is well known now. There are common tier, uncommon tier, rare tier, mythic tier, and extreme tier. The only extreme scarab is Horn Preservation. Most of the valuable ones are mythic tier. They're about 10 times rarer than the rare tier. Rare tier is Cartography Scarab of Corruption. Uncommon tier is, I think, Ritual Scarab of Wisps. I think is the best one of them. And common tier is Classic Ambush. I'm not actually certain on Ritual Scarab of Wisps. So what is something I know to be uncommon tier? Domination Scarab of Apparitions. So currently those are the tierings. And it's basically, we think it's a 300, 200, 110, 1 weighting. But we're not sure about the 1. 1 might be wrong. Anyway, what is commonly found? And what is higher tier maps here? I think this is going to be a fantastic change if they get it right. And this is going to mean that getting a stack of like 3 classic Essence Scarabs is going to be fantastic. So yeah, basically good stuff that's happening here with these changes. And now we have, using an Orb of Horizons on an Elder Guardian or Conqueror map, we'll re-roll the map as we know already. Completing a non-unique map at a tier lower than it is naturally found no longer gives map bonus objective completion. RIP Explorers Scouting Reports. That's what this is about. This is a very specific mechanic that was able to be abused for completing the Atlas quickly. And I think what they're going for here is making it so that the process of going from 80 Atlas bonus to 110 is something that's a bit bigger than it used to be. And Weed in chat is mentioning that 3 Titanic Scarabs dropped when it comes to the Scarab condensation before. So yeah, Titanic Scarab is definitely one of the most common types. Like the ones that just have a 2-word name like that, Abyss Scarab, Titanic Scarab, Harvest Scarab, those are pretty much all common rarity. The scouting reports changes, I think, are made because Kirak missions are going to have these new... They're going to have something new going for them. Explorers scouting reports are probably in a bad spot now, but ultimately, this felt like a bad mechanic, the way it worked in the past. That was something that was just messy. Further improved level generation of blighted maps so they fail to open less often. And now we have the changes of what maps are going to be around. So, Acid Cavern's back. This is a pretty bad map. It's also very, very rippy, but it does have unique items that you can't realistically get anywhere else. They do exist, but there are bosses that are present in Acid Cavern's map that don't otherwise exist, and these bosses have, because they're from a past league mechanic, they have specific drops that you won't get anywhere else. Arid Lake is a good map. Arsenal is a middle tier map from memory. I might be confusing it with one of the others. No, sorry, it's a bad tier map. It's a bad map. Bazaar is the one I was getting it confused with. That's middling tier. Canyon is slightly above average. Conservatory is average. Core is bad. Frozen Cabins is average. Ghetto is slightly below average. Grave Trough is far below average. Iceberg is quite good. It's a beautiful looking layout as well. Ivory Temple is middle tier, and it's one of the largest maps, both in terms of area and also in terms of monster count. Laboratory I hate. I think in reality, like to be impartial, Laboratory map is probably mid tier, but I hate it. Mineral Pools is one of the worst maps in the game. Park is good. Peninsula is good, and Phantasmagoria is mid. Precinct is mid. Shipyard is mid, maybe a bit better than mid. Sunken City a bit lower than mid. Primordial Blocks I'm always happy to see back. It has a hideout in it, and it's not a very good map, but it has a really nice layout. Nice as in it looks cool. And then we have Tower map is back. Tower is mid, maybe mid plus. Villa map is back. It is very much middle. Wasteland is back. It is a bad map. It's one of the worst ones. It's like Desert. Is Desert going for it though? Desert's going for it. So Wasteland for Desert is an exact wash. Waste Pool is good, and it's going to be alongside Toxic Sewer for once. Waterways is just Channel, except we have Channel as well. So both Waterways and Channel are going to coexist, and Wharf is coming back. Wharf is mid. Wharf is actually very similar to the old Gorge map in terms of its layout. And it's also as empty as Gorge used to be as well. Next, we have the following maps are being removed from the Atlas. Academy. Academy is only useful for Expedition Big Boom. It's a bad map, but it does have that. But Museum is probably still around. As long as Museum's still around, then that's not going to matter. Burial Chambers I will not miss. I'm glad to see that go for a little while. Cage being gone is... Dungeon's still around, but this might mean that early 6-link farming from the div card might be a bit harder. Caldera is going away. That's middle tier. Carcass is bad. Cells map is pretty... Oh, actually, a lot of things that drop the 6-link div card are going. Crater is gone. Crater I quite like. Caldera I dislike. Crater I do like. They're both the same tile set though. Courthouse is gone. That's one of the super rippy ones. Coves is gone. I've had enough Coves. That's from BPL. Desert's gone, but it's being replaced by Wasteland, unfortunately, which is just as bad. Same thing. Dry Sea is very mid. Fields is very mid because it's so empty. It's a very nice layout, but it's just really empty. Fungal Hollow is gone. I like Fungal Hollow. It's not a very good map, but I do like it. Gardens is gone. That's one of the worst. That is the worst of the outdoorsy maps. Like outdoorsy is in the Orchid style layouts. Graveyard is the rippier of the two. There's Cemetery, there's Graveyard. Graveyard's the one that's got the rippy boss. Haunted Mansion is taking a break for this league. Haunted Mansion is a very sketchy map sometimes. Map boss is mechanically easy, but very unforgiving. Infested Valley is another boss that is mechanically easy and very unforgiving. Lair I will not miss, but we're probably still going to have one of the Rigwald maps. Lookout is going away. Lookout will be missed, but not by very much. Marshes, Pit, Port, Relic Chambers, Residence. Of the rest, I think... there's something about me. I don't know what it is. I like Spider Lair. I shouldn't. It's not a good map, but I do like it. Anyways, all of that said, the maps, it's mostly a wash. We're gaining some, we're losing some, but all the most significant maps are still around. Map tiers and locations are being shuffled, and map bosses are changing around as usual. Crafting recipes are shuffled, and divination cards will be shuffled as well. Yeah. So I guess we'll know where the divination cards are once players log in standard. They can find this out. So if you want to know them before you get to endgame, just log in on standard, complete a tier 16. I think it may need to be corrupted map. And then at that point, your entire atlas will get filled out. And then you'll be able to look and see what exactly is going. Okay, so Atlas passive tree changes. This is one I love. Atlas passive skills that provide additional chances for your maps to contain a master or extra content that can be turned off through Atlas passives now also cause scarabs in your maps to have an increased chance to be scarabs of that type of extra content. The Ruthless Atlas passive tree doesn't get this benefit. So this is really, really good. This means is that if you allocate things on your Atlas that grant you Breach, then you're going to be getting a bias towards getting Breach Scarabs dropping. Now, there are, of course, a couple of drawbacks to this. Like, there are some Scarab classes, like Expedition Scarabs, are a bit disappointing. Ultimatum Scarab. Now, Ultimatum ones are good. What else is there that's got disappointing Scarabs overall in terms of the core setups? It's like Harvest has very good Scarabs, just the common Scarab is bad. There'll be a couple others. It's just like Abyss has Scarabs that are less powerful on average. Not less powerful, but they're less in demand. And Expedition has no good Scarabs that I can think of. Like, I mean, there are Scarabs that are alright, but there's no standout Scarab that people want. Whereas like Harvest has Harvest Scarab of doubling, has other good Scarabs of the type. It is not just the Scarabs that... It is not just the base version. It will apply to all of them there. So that's, yeah, basically... That's one of my favorites here. Now, Intelligence Gathering. This is a huge change for people that are involved in the racing scene, because Intelligence Gathering was just passive, massive amounts of safe houses. It's going to be gone, and it's going to be replaced with something that causes executing Immortal Syndicate members in your maps to grant intelligence to their relevant division equal to 2 times their rank. So this is still worth taking, but there is no longer going to be ways to get a whole bunch of safe houses without having Jund encounters. So this is something that is really, really, really substantial. Now, the ability to block Heist is being removed because it never really made sense to take, and it's being replaced by Kalguran, Ore, and Scarabs being something you can block instead. Whether people want this or not is open. The Miners' Strike name is interesting. I mean, obviously, there's significant events in Britain in the 1980s and a couple other things like that, but not even talking real world. I'm talking about in Synthesis League. One of the best little storylines that the game had in Synthesis League that was removed then was just a small little snippet where you were playing the role a young woman that was leading a strike amongst miners of sulfite deposits, and like she's like organizing this strike there, and then there's this horrific backlash against it from the I think it's the Templars that were running it, and they just seal them all alive. It's like this really horrifying story, but it was really done well. So yeah, that's something that jumps out there. Added 2 Atlas memory clusters to the Atlas passive tree. So one of these is allowing you to bias against encountering certain pinnacle bosses. So this is like, I want my chances to not be at the Incarnation of Dread, not be at the Incarnation of Neglect. You allocate those 2, and then instead you take the ones that bias towards the Incarnation of Fear, if that's what you want to do. Now, what does it mean to get 80% less chance? Oh, sorry, 80% reduced chance here. If you spec into one of these, then you're going to go from getting 1 to 1 to 1 to getting 1 to 5 to 5. So you're going to go to 1 in 11 to get the one you don't want, rather than 1 in 3. If you spec 2 of them, it's going to be 1 in 7 to get either of the ones you want. And so 2 in 7 in total, 5 in 7 to get the one you want. So you've got a lot of control here over which of these that you pursue. And I think 80% is a very large number there. The other thing we've got here is this thing that allows memory strands on equipment items generated in your maps to have a 50% chance to be lucky. I kind of feel like this is a tax node. Even with everything I've said so far about how the memory strand system feels like it has these weaknesses of being like weaker than recombination, it's still going to have some use cases, and I kind of feel like this might be a tax node here. I guess we'll see on that. Right, so settlers added to the core game. The town is started as fully built. Gold can drop from slain monsters, can still be used for paying workers' wages, as well as passive tree respecs and purchasing items from the black market. A number of NPCs throughout Rayclast. Currency exchange returns. You first encounter Faustus in Act 6, which is a reasonable spot for him. Faustus is probably not that useful until you've got the gold income you have maybe around Act 9. But I guess people that overkill, like people who are slower, can then access it in Act 6 and it'll be reasonable enough there. Upon reaching the endgame, Johan will invite you to Kingsmarch, and in maps you'll start to find ore veins, which Kalguran workers can mine for you. You can then yeet this off to various ports in exchange for rewards, and you can also do this with crops, so crops are still there. By sending them to Karui ports, you receive tattoos, which are something that exists in the game at the moment, but Kalguran ports are now going to grant rune graphs instead of the rune smithing enchantments. Isla has continued to make modifications on the Recombinator. So, essentially, there are now 2 options for it. You can use PathOfExile 2 recombination, or you can use PathOfExile 1 recombination. However, it seems like the PathOfExile 1 version of recombination, I feel like it's just stronger in general. So, that's, yeah, basically, that feels like it's the way things are going to go there. Now, Kalguran Scarab of Abundance causes the area to contain an additional ore deposit. If this hits Bismuth, wow, that's going to be really substantial. Additionally, there's these things that can then cause ore deposits to be higher tier, and then you've got this thing that says ore deposits grant smelted bars instead of marking ore. So essentially, Kalguran Scarab of Refinement is just giving you some amount of gold, because that's what the difference is between getting smelted bars and getting ore deposits. It's just getting, I mean, there is a slight time difference as well, especially if your miners aren't up to scratch yet, but it's mostly just going to be something that doesn't matter very much. But abundance and guarded riches are going to be pretty substantial. You can also grant 20% chance to contain ore deposits and 50% chance to get a second one. Ore deposits are more likely to be rarer varieties, and also a chance for them to be replaced by lost shipments. This one will have to be looked into to see if that's any good. I think this is one we would definitely want to take. Coal and sausage raises a really interesting point there. Yeah, that they didn't add the ore deposits to Delve. That would have made a lot of sense. That would definitely have made a lot of sense. Then we have something that lets you bias towards specific options. Now, 100% increased chance for ore deposits found in your maps to be bismuth is huge. The reason I say this is because bismuth deposits, this is going to be a fun one to say over and over again, A bismuth deposit is a really substantial thing because it grants a massive more multiplier, or when I say massive, it's a significant more multiplier to the gold in the entire rest of the map. And additionally, 30% chance to add an additional modifier to monsters they affect is even bigger. So there is a lot that is coming along there. On top of this, if you want specific other types of ore, you can take them. So, you know, Crimson Infusion, granting 2 additional corrupted growths, that is just generic juice, but it is less generic juice than the bismuth one. And it's going to then reduce your chances of getting the bismuth ones, which are the bigger ones. So bismuth is better. Amber Infusion, I don't think you want this except maybe for a short period of time if you want to get more jewelry early on, because amber is really good early on for getting jewelry, but I'm not sold on it being fantastic. Verisium, like, this is a massive amount of additional Verisium that you would get, especially if you're confident that you can handle over-channeled ones. That's going to be 160% more Verisium if you did that. But I don't feel like you get all that much from having massively more Verisium. So yeah, that's basically all there. Orielcum, the buffs last twice as long. Buffs lasting twice as long is actually pretty substantial as well, but ultimately, I feel like you just have to take this here. This one's fantastic. Then we have Refiner's Bargain. This is a keystone. Equipment items with rarity that are dropped by possessed monsters. So note the word possessed. These have a 25% chance to be converted to thaumaturgic dust. Sulfite found in your maps is granted as a random ore instead at 25% of the value. Life Force found in your maps is generated as a random crop instead at 300% of the value. This feels massive. This really feels massive here. This one is like, I just feel like you want to take this always, don't you? And then Refiner's Bargain, the possessed monsters in your maps, like Seance is still on the map device, right? I just want to confirm that before I start going on to this. Is Seance still on the map device? And I think it is. Let me just confirm. Where's Path of Pathing? Will be the way to go for that. Pathofpathing.com. I just got to quickly check this in the background. So, I wanted to confirm, Seance Cluster is indeed, yes, up to 5 rare monsters in each of your maps are possessed and their minions are touched. So, that is really substantial. The ability to go, okay, I want to get a whole chunk of additional thaumaturgic dust from maps. Sulfite found in your maps is granted as a random ore at 25% of the value. That's neither here nor there, but it's something. But Life Force, crops are a big deal if you're getting like... Ooh, I'm just trying to think, like, how much would you be willing to pay for crops? Crops are like 25 gold and time. I feel like, okay, if you're not taking Harvest, you definitely take this. Harvest is going to... Harvest to Life Force... Harvest Life Force to crops really needs to be mathed out hard. But yeah, ultimately that seems like it's going to be something that, like Refiner's Bargain, I want to use this a lot, especially just with Seance. Like the ability to go, all right, I want my possessed monsters to have this chance to drop so much thaumaturgic dust. So it's going to be not a small amount of it. And thaumaturgic dust should still be bind to character on equip, I think. Bind to account on acquire, I think. But we'll find out as well with this. Like if thaumaturgic dust is something that just drops, that might also be something that's a big deal too. Yeah. The other thing that's going to be hilarious, right? There are going to be people who are going to get screenshots of getting 1 million thaumaturgic dust, and it's like, which tier 0 just got deleted? Which tier 0 just got nuked? You don't know. Oh, here is something that's really funny. There are now that's really good. There are 5 job rankings for King's March workers rather than 10. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 would be the things that were only things that came up during this start of the storyline. Now, Adjusted Banana. to more closely match the size of the Kalguran version. Can anyone give me anything about what this banana is? While we're doing that, I'm just going to have a quick look at some of the comments in chat there. We've got the, what do I think about adding bismuth for general juice? Yes. Crimson iron for general juice, I think, is bad because it takes away from the bismuth. And likewise, Orielcum for temporary power is also something I'm not that interested in. And then we have the thaumaturgic dust. This is the stuff that you get from ROG, like from disenchanting items. So when they talk about equipment items with rarity, I think what they mean there is that the chance for a scoured item to be turned into thaumaturgic dust is 0. The chance for a currency item to turn into thaumaturgic dust is 0. But if it is a magic, a rare, or a unique item, that is an item with rarity. Therefore, it is eligible for this. That's my expectation. And yeah, the Crimson Node with Titanic Scarabs is something that is a bit different. That is, I'm sort of was more thinking about the generic juice rather than specific niche applications. So can anyone work out what this banana is? Like, is there a banana that is like ridiculously big and in there, or I want to know what that is. Anyways, that's enough of this. And of course, the most important line of all, move to lamppost in King's March. Like that is that is just really critical. Okay, so Betrayal rework. The Mastermind fight is now completely decoupled from the safe house mechanic. Defeating the boss no longer resets the state of the Syndicate, and there is a new fragment that can be used to travel to the Mastermind's lair. This can be dropping from safe house leaders only at high levels. So it looks like they're removing the ability to fight Katarina at low level entirely, and that's going to be something that will be coming up there now. Now we have the lamppost that chicken in the 325 stream. The Mastermind boss fight is now going to have fewer immunity phases. Now, when they say new rewards here, we have the All Flames, which we discussed much earlier in the stream. Right near the start of the stream, we discussed that was going to be added in there. Those are going to be really substantial, and this is going to make the Mastermind way stronger to fight than it's been in the past. But then also, fewer immunity phases is going to make it faster, and they say significantly fewer, because I believe there were 8 in that fight. I believe there's the phases where you've got to then go and do something, which are actually kind of fun, but the fight does go for very long. Mastermind's lair cannot be accessed if you've not unlocked the endgame, so RIP not killing Katava. Veiled modifiers on the Mastermind's uniques are now able to unveil some new modifiers that only exist on these uniques. This is pretty substantial. One of them that was showcased was the shield, which had +1 Spectre on it. There was something else that was a Spectre option as well. So a whole bunch of things there. So Moogle in chat is asking, what's the deal with YouTube's chat and links? Unfortunately, I have to have them blocked because of the amount of spam that would otherwise be sent. There's just problems with bad actors on YouTube, unfortunately. So yeah, you can farm Betrayal earlier on if you want, but you won't get access to Katarina that way at all. Katarina can now drop All Flame Embers, which are basically Giga Juice Scarabs, and they replace a Scarab, and they can also do weird things. They're going to work well in combination with each other. Essentially, this is like a whole bunch of new Mythic Scarabs, but they have a deterministic but time-consuming method of getting access to them. She no longer drops rare veiled items with exclusive modifiers. These are now exclusive to the unique items that she can drop. However, she does drop rare double veiled items. Rare double veiled items are going to be interesting. We'll have to find that one out. Safe House Intelligence that is granted from choices made after defeating Immortal Syndicate members has been lowered. The time taken to reach a safe house is overall longer than it used to be. And they've also removed the thing that let you bypass that. So farming huge amounts of safe houses early is going to be slower. You can only execute your safe house leaders. I thought that was the case there already. Veiled Orbs are being changed to Veiled Exalts. Veiled Chaos Orbs are coming back. We knew that. And they're dropping from safe house leaders. Safe house rewards have been completely rebalanced, and there's no further information about that, so you're going to have to find that out. Betrayal Scarab of Intelligence has been renamed to Betrayal Scarab of the Allflame. 75% increased number of monster packs that are substituted by Allflame Embers in the area. So this is going to be something that you will use probably alongside every Allflame, unless they've made this mythic rarity. That's going to be the one thing that comes up on that one. Now, all crafting bench recipes have been moved out of Betrayal and have been put into the Atlas. So that's just going to be somewhere in there. Probably the ones that are desirable at endgame are going to be in high tier maps, I would expect. I do hope that they have put the hybrid, elemental, and chaos resistances early though. There are now recipe objects that do this. We've had this one already. No longer need to speak to Jun to unveil items. You can just right click, and if you're a control player, then you've got an alternative there, and select the modifier you want. Removing all rivalries is no longer an option, but there is still a bad option, and that is remove all rivalries in the current division. And also, bargaining with Immortal Syndicate members can now give multiple Scarabs and Veiled items, but fewer currency items. Okay, someone has finally come up with the relevance of that banana that was mentioned earlier. It's a comment that was from, it's a meme from Counter-Strike, apparently. That's the reason for that. What are the early use cases for the Veiled Chaos Orbs? I think the primary one is on fractured items. If you get like a set of boots that drop that have, say, 42% fractured fire resistance on them, that's the sort of thing that you're going to want to throw a Veiled Chaos Orb on, assuming that they're reasonably accessible. Player balance. Intensity stacks are now lost slower. Arcane Surge is now buffed. Note that this is not the entirety of balance changes to players. This is just the ones that affect every player baseline. There will be a whole bunch of things when we get to character power. But now we have the fun time. This is where we go through all of the skill gems that are coming up here. And this is a huge bunch of changes. We're going to start with Animate Guardian. Animate Guardians now retain their items when they die, but you cannot summon them back again in that same area unless the area is a hideout. So, if you take Bob in to fight Cirrus, and Bob goes and walks off into a storm, as Bob tends to do, then Bob is out of the Cirrus fight. But Bob can then be brought back to life in another area. Bob will remember the items that he had, and so Animate Guardian is just in a much better place than it used to be. Like, honestly, I think this is a fantastic change. Animate Guardian is something you still need to invest in if you want it to be something that's a reliable buff bot, but it's not something that's going to feel crushing to lose. Fantastic set of changes there. And someone has found the banana. I'm just going to have a quick look at this, see if it's something that's worth... This is bananas. There is a hidden banana in there. Okay. There's a hidden banana in King's March. Alright, so that's it. If you want to have a look at that, it is on Reddit. But basically, yeah, Animate Guardian is going to be, if you're willing to invest in it, it becomes a good option, but it's also not something that you feel like you have to do. There's a number of ways that you can make an Animate Guardian tanky, and so if you want to play around with it, then it's got some potential, but the more that you focus on making it buff you, the less tanky it intrinsically is. And so it's a pretty solved problem as to what the best Animate Guardian layouts are, but there's always a couple of weird ones that come up. Bane of Condemnation. This is taking longer to cast and is going to deal more damage. This is a buff overall to Bane of Condemnation, but I just don't know that this is going to make a big difference. Know that other Chaos Dot spells have had substantial buffs in this patch, but not the Banes. And I think that's something, this is something I actually was talking about on a stream last night. I didn't want Bane to get buffed because if Bane is good, it kind of dominates the other Chaos Dot skills. What they've done here is they've made the other Chaos Dot skills better, but they haven't done anything with Bane. So Bane is just a utility skill. Kind of the way that like your Wave of Conviction on a lot of elemental damage builds that use it. Wave of Conviction doesn't necessarily do all that much damage itself. It's there to make your other skills better. I think that's the idea with Bane here. Now, Blade Blast of Unloading is going to be just straight up better. Blade Blast of Dagger Detonation, strictly better than it was. Blade Flurry of Incision. This is just getting straight numbers buffs, but it is getting quite a lot of them. Like, that feels like a lot that's changing there. Blade Flurry of Incision, like, again, it's a thing I've mentioned before with channeling skills. I'm not really that interested in using them. If you do want to play a channeling skill in this league, probably go with Flame Blast or Divine Ire. I think Divine Ire is actually getting direct buffs, and it's also got the new support gem. Blade Trap of Greatswords. This thing is getting a big buff and is still trash. So the reason Blade Trap of Greatswords is bad, this is a cooldown skill, and it has reasonable numbers, right? But the problem with it is that you can't use it as your only skill, and there's no other skills that clearly work with it. So the standard Blade Trap is fine because you can use it as your only skill. Blade Trap of Laceration is serviceable because you can use it as your only skill. Blade Trap of Greatswords, though, can't be used in conjunction with those because it's a two-hander, and ultimately that's the reason that it's just doesn't work at all. It's a cool concept, but until there's some sort of direct attack that you can use on the build or some sort of alternate clear skill, it's solely usable on bosses, and ultimately, like, Blade Trap probably does that better anyway. So yeah, just doesn't work. Okay, we have Blade Trap of Laceration is I was looking at the people who are talking about these numbers that are coming up in chat there. I'm actually not sure what they are. There's something YouTube leaderboard that's come up or something that they've made a bunch of changes that I'm not entirely certain about. Anyway, that's some funny stuff that's coming up in chat. Blade Trap of Laceration we quickly mentioned. Blade Flurry is getting numerical buffs that are pretty substantial. Again, I don't like the skill, so if you like it, go ahead. Blade Vortex of the Scythe. This is getting its numbers increased, but yeah, I think this was something like the numbers increases are really substantial in this. So maybe it matters, but I'm not sold on it. I'm not sold on that one. Body Swap of Sacrifice is now getting more damage on it, which is interesting. It's not something that, like, that's already pretty good to ignite with, isn't it? Body Swap of Sacrifice, or am I getting wrong whether it can ignite or not? I'm just going to check that. Body Swap of Sacrifice. Body Swap. Pretty sure it can ignite and has a penalty to the damage, but I've got to check that. 50% less damage with elements. So we are looking at, you are being able to make things go boom for a total of 34%, but then you 17% of the minions' life. That can be a lot, right? That can be a huge amount. And yeah, that's like, that is a lot there. Okay, so Blight is getting a 20% buff. I think all the Chaos Dot skills are getting 20%ed. Now, except for Bane, as we mentioned. I want to mention something quickly about this. This is a situation where there is there's a notable on the passive tree. I think it's just called Corruption, isn't it? And Corruption, I hope this is probably a disambiguation page. No, this is correct. Okay, so this used to be 35%. Then in 321, they came along and they nerfed it to 20% increase effective Withered. This is a huge deal because Withered is so strong. Now, the change was made because in 320 and 319, Poison was absolutely and utterly dominant. So Granny Gear Games came along and were like, okay, we need to nerf Poison, but we're not going to nerf the actual real problem, which was Temporal Chains and some of the things around that. Instead, we're going to nerf Corruption on the notable passive tree. Then they eventually had to go and nerf Temporal Chains as well. But they never reverted this change, and this really hurt a lot of the other Chaos damage builds. So anyways, what they're doing here is restoring the power that was taken at this point in the base damage of the Chaos skills. So that is the intention of what they're doing here. Hopefully they get this into a good spot. Okay, we have BSCT, which is increased area of... BSCT. Why did I say BSCT? Bone Shadow of Carnage. This is going to gain a bit of extra area of effect here based on the stun duration, and not very big changes. Basically, just keep playing Bone Shadow of Carnage if you already were. Burning Arrow of Vigor, it's getting faster, which it critically needed. Less mana cost is not that big a deal because this is a slow skill. Now deals added fire damage. That's... Oh, wow, that's getting a lot. Okay, Burning Arrow of Vigor is clunky. It wasn't being played, but the numbers on it are just getting that bit better now. So it deals a lot of added fire damage, and there is also that ring that's being added in this patch that grants the fire pen based upon your overcap fire resist. Normally I would think of Burning Arrow of Vigor as something you would play as Ignite Prolif, but you could potentially run it with Hit and that new ring as well. So yeah, basically there's a bunch of things that are going on there. That's... I don't know if it's enough. I don't think it is, but I'm very open to being wrong on this. Okay, Carrion Golem of Scavenging. These golems that don't really provide big buffs, these are getting substantial improvements. Cracklanch of Branching and Disintegration are getting big boosts here. Like, these are substantial. Both alternate versions of Cracklanch are getting a lot there. It may actually be enough for these to get there. Cold Dot is getting the same things that Chaos Dot is getting. And Cold Dot got nerfed when it didn't need to be. It's actually... These are more than 20%, aren't they? Oh, no. No, it's not. Some of them are, some of them are not. But Cold Dot definitely seems to need this. And it's interesting that Suffering is pointing out... We were talking about Enmity's Embrace. Let's just quickly go back to that item for a sec, because this was the thing that came up with Burning Arrow of Vigor. There's something that came to my mind as something that kind of potentially could work with that as well. Note that the 55% reduced fire resistance is multiplicative, so it's a multiplicative effect on all things that modify your fire resistance. But damage penetrates fire resistance equal to your overcap fire resistance is one of the most powerful lines of text that I've seen on an item that's not named Crystallized Omniscience. This is crazy amounts of damage here. So this item is really good. But other people are thinking about the self-damage on it. 449 fire damage when you use a skill, you could potentially... If you use 2 of these, then your fire resistance is going to be 0. So, I don't know if you could get it to work. Is there a way to get outright immune to fire damage somehow? I don't think there is. No, and even then that would stop working. I don't see a way to make Enmity's Embrace do enough damage to you that it triggers a lot of loops. If you're thinking about loops with it. Melding of the Flesh doesn't. Melding of the Flesh changes the way that things are measured. So there's a question. Impurity of Elements is a possibility, yeah. There might be some weird setup that you could potentially do with it, but I'm not seeing it yet. Using 2 of these is catastrophic, because the 55% reduced resistances, they will add together, so you'll have 110% reduced resistance, and that's going to mean that you can't get fire resistance on your character. Unless you can get things that are like Calandra Reflected Rings that have negative resistance, but even then you're not getting enough of it. And also you've just clogged up both your resistances as well, both of your rings. And so, yeah, it is when you use a skill, so maybe you could spam it a lot. There possibly is a Ward Loop variant that uses that item. And that wouldn't be one that uses Burning Arrow of Vigor, though. They're quite different to each other. I thought of that item because I was thinking of Burning Arrow of Vigor, and then someone else has distracted me by thinking about it in the context of Ward Loop. Lots of different things that are coming up there. Anyways, we were trying to move on at the moment. We had gone through Cracklanch and then Cold Snap. Contagion of Subsiding is getting buffed about the same amount as everything else. Contagion of Transference is getting buffed by the same amount as everything else. Cyclone is getting buffed. Cyclone was already like... Okay, so it was primarily used in conjunction with Shockwave support. That was the primary way that it was played, but it has been at least kind of playable for a while, and it's getting better here. But Cyclone of Tumult is the one that's really getting substantial changes here. So massive increase to the amount of attack speed it's got on it, and also there is the base static damage is going up. The mana control is, mana is staying more controllable on it, and also the attack speed per stage is just exploding. So Cyclone of Tumult is something that doesn't work for every single build, but if you're willing to play around with this, it's miles better now. And this is just something that's very, very different. Death Aura from Death's Oath is getting 25%ed. Probably not enough. Not with the other changes to the game that's had over the last while. DDOCR is getting nerfed here, but these changes are to the flat damage rather than to the corpse scaling, so it doesn't really matter. These are nerfs, but they're basically a non-change. Discharge of Misery is getting a buff here, and how substantial a buff is this? This is like getting a chunk of extra damage on it. Like 20% more damage on everything. This is the one that's designed to be triggered. Discharge of Misery is quite a bit better than it was. Divine Ire is getting a buff, but the primary buff Divine Ire is getting is, well, it's quite a bit actually. It's like 25%, 25% more damage, and then it's got an extra little smidgen as well. Yeah, damage on Divine Ire is going up pretty substantially here. So the base damage is up, the scaling factors are going up, and also you've got access to this new support gem for channeling gems. Divine Ire, if you're willing to play it, it's just going to be way better than it was. Divine Ire of Disintegration is getting changed. I'm not familiar enough with this to assess it really, because the cast speed is getting slower at the same time. Oh yes, Carlos in chat has pointed out what I was missing with Debt of Chain Reaction. This is to nerf its interaction with Archmage. That's the reason there. Okay, so we have Divine Ire of Disintegration, Divine Ire of Holy Lightning. This is getting more damage, and is it just straight up more damage? It's nothing else on it. Yeah, it's basically just two stacking sources of more damage on it. Essence Drain and Essence Drain of Desperation are getting just flat numbers buffs on it. And Essence Drain of Desperation, though, I think that's the one that's really terrible, isn't it? I'm just going to confirm that. Essence Drain of Desperation. Is this the one that does what I think it does? It's, yeah, lose life and energy shield equal to a percentage of the amount of, yeah, that thing is terrible, terrible, terrible. And this one has the reverse. This one gains you some of it back as life. But the one that the Desperation one, this is just like, it's negative life leech on it. It's kind of like built-in reflect. Yeah, basically just don't use this. Essence Drain of Wickedness is having its duration nerfed, and basically is getting better at healing you. It's dealing more DPS, but it's getting its duration nerfed substantially. Exsanguinate is getting a small buff here. Now, Exsanguinate comes up because there is a thing that causes traps to be better with when they're able to chain. Like there's that mod that's available now on gloves that comes from the Triathan Mercenaries that is going to be really, really solid for Exsanguinate, as well as Lightning Trap. Exsanguinate only with traps, but that's the primary way it's often used. Exsanguinate of Transmission is getting buffed, which it kind of needs. It's the weaker of the two of them. Winter of Finality is getting numbers improvements at the expense of slower cast time. So it's basically going to be harder hitting. Everything about it is, everything about the spellcast is more impactful, but it's not really gaining much from it. It's going to get more screen coverage at the expense of less cast speed. Winter of Transience is getting buffs all around on that. These are substantial. Fire Trap is getting nerfed, but it's still fine. The builds that use Fire Trap, the interesting thing here is that the primary build that uses Fire Trap actually ignites with it as well. So it's still going to deal full initial hit damage. and that means the ignite component is still going to be the same. That spreads better than the fire trap burning ground. So ultimately, fire trap is perfectly fine. This is not the righteous fire nerf that people were worried about. It's still going to be completely fine. Flame Blast of Celerity is casting slower. It is going to have... I'm going to parse this in terms of how it's going to go. This is... It's better, right? Yeah, I think everything about this is better. Like, it's... Okay, so it's not quite as fast if you do the minimum one, but you definitely don't want to do the minimum one usually. You do want to charge it up. There's the new support gem that works with it as well. Flame Blast of Celerity, if you like the playstyle, self-casting it seems like it's going to be good, honestly. It just looks like it's got a lot of good stuff on it, and also more spell damage is going to come from quality. So quality is better, although not strictly better. Looking really good. Flame Dash of Return was absolutely terrible, and it remains absolutely terrible. It's just slightly less bad. Flame Surge of Combusting is getting a numbers buff, and is it getting anything else with it? Burning Ground now deals a lot more fire damage per second of inflicted ignite, and just straight up really substantial increases there to the amount of damage that it's coming out. Sorry, to the amount of damage this does. I think it needed more than that though. Only used Flame Dash of Return for 5-way resets. That's quite funny that it works for that. That is really cool if that works. I haven't played around with it. So you just use it to duck in and then back out again. Okay, Firestorm of Meteors. This is getting a nice chunk of extra damage on it. I feel like Firestorm of Meteors was already modestly playable. And now it's just getting better. Frostblades, I did not need to see a nerf to Frostblades. I felt like it was actually in a position where it could do with a bit of a boost. So this, though, I want to mention quickly, like, I don't think I agree that this is the right choice they're making here. I think Frostblades actually needed a bit of a buff instead. However, the thing they're doing here is going after a bunch of melee skills where the skill hits hard, but then there is also the projection of additional damage out. They're making it so that the projected damage out, and this applies to Frostblades, to Lightning Strike, to Molten Strike of the Zenith, and probably more. The projection of damage outwards is being made so that it is less the focus of the skill. So Frostblades, instead of dealing 100 damage to the main target and 100 damage to each of the surrounding targets, it's now dealing 100 to the main one and 70 to all the surrounding targets. Actually, this doesn't affect it when you're doing single target, which was the weakness of Frostblades. So Frostblades is still pretty much the same as it was before. Maybe it's like there is a nerf, but it's not huge. Frostblades of Catabasis, though, that is getting hit hard. That is really getting hit hard. That one is going to get absolutely crunched. So that one's, yeah, much worse than it was. So Frostblades is going from 100 to the primary and 100 to all the surrounding, to 100 to the primary and 70 to all of the surrounding. Lightning Strike was instead hitting the primary target with both. At least you had the range perfect, so it was 100 to the primary, but that actually scaled up to 200 and then 100 to the surrounding monsters. Lightning Strike is getting nerfed so that it's going to be 150 to the primary and 50 to the surrounding. That, I think, was the numbers on it. And yeah, so that is a good point that Carlos is pointing out, that this is a nerf to all of the melee builds that used Sniper's Mark. That is correct. Yeah, that's what they're going after there. Anyway, Frostblades of Catabasis. This is like a 42% nerf to the skill. I don't think it survives this. Does anyone think it survives 42% less damage? And that's to everything as well. People were using it as a hit skill. I think they're trying to force it into being a dot skill, and no one was really using it for a dot. I think this is just gone. I feel like Catabasis, if they had instead gone for 330%, I feel like then it would still be fine. But I feel like 240 is too low. The dot is indeed unaffected. So if you're willing to scale a dot, then your build still works. But I just don't... I think this is them saying, yeah, this is a dot-only skill now. Boonrite of Soul Sacrifice, I would need to dig into this a bit more. I'm not that familiar with the skill. Frostbomb of Forthcoming is getting a substantial numbers boost. 20% or so, a little bit under. That's pretty good. Galvanic Field of Intensity seems to be getting 10% extra damage based on that. Oh, and it's getting way faster. Oh, wow, that's actually really substantial. Okay, so this is getting 10% more damage, roughly. 9% more damage. And then it's also getting the beam frequency is getting boosted substantially. It's going to be like 33% more damage that it deals in general. But there is this cap on how often it can hit the same target. Ultimately, if you're hitting the same target, it's going to hit the same target on... Yeah, if there's only one target. So if it's not able to hit other targets as well, then this is going to be like a 20% DPS increase. If it can hit multiple targets, then it's now going to hit every point... It's going to hit every 800 milliseconds instead of every 900. So no matter what happens, Galvanic Field of Intensity, it's going to hit more monsters. It's just straight out way better than it was. Glacial Cascade of the Fissure. Interestingly, they're talking about increasing the effectiveness of added damage, but not changing the amount of flat damage it does. I assume they are changing the flat as well, because normally the two are tied together. So I don't know exactly what's going on with that, but that's quite a bit better, but it needed more than this. Glacial Cascade of the Fissure, I think, just needed more for it to be any good. Hexblast of Havoc is losing radius and gaining damage. This is a buff overall, and it's still nothing I've been able to play around with has been able to make this work. It has just it's not been able to be made good enough with anything that I've theory crafted with it. I've asked a couple of other people their thoughts, and they've also agreed. We've not been able to make this work yet. I don't think this is going to make it work. I don't think it's quite enough. Holy Flame Totem can now target enemies 30% further away, 33% further away. That's pretty substantial. And likewise for the Ire version. These are, like, I feel like they're just probably still not quite there. Ice Crash of Cadence. We have a substantial buff to the attack speed, and we also grant additional damage. This is a big deal, honestly. Ice Crash of Cadence, I think, was almost there. And now it's going to have like 11% more attack speed. Physical added as extra cold. It's like, yeah, this is all substantial. Ice Crash of Cadence might actually get there. There's like as something that has enough going for it now. People saying in chat they think that Dual Strike of Ambidexterity is still better. Ice Nova of Deep Freeze. This is getting a bunch of buffs here, but probably not enough. It's like, this feels like it wants to be played on a build that wants multiple skills, but there's not really that many of them at the moment. Ice Nova of Frostbolts is getting nerfed hard. Hard nerfs on this. It's probably still fine, honestly. It's the Hierophant Archmage package is getting nerfed though overall as well. So the primary way this has been played has been in that package. Ultimately, I feel like there's a bit of a push away from the tried and tested spell builds, and this is there's definitely things that are going to get there now with it. But Ice Nova Frostbolt's probably still good enough to play. And Incinerate of Expanse is getting substantial changes here that are, like, these are big buffs. I haven't played with the skill, so I'm not sure if this is a case of D tier to C tier, or if it's a case of B tier to A tier. But these are substantial buffs to it. Pretty substantial. I think the thing with spell builds, Inkbot's are saying, like, a common thing people are saying is that all spell builds were utterly terrible. I don't think they were utterly terrible. They were just worse than other things. There's this tendency in the PathOfExile community to dismiss anything that's not one of the best 3 or 4 builds in a league. And often like things like Frostblades in 325, or even take something that's genuinely a bad skill like what's it called? Smite of Divine Judgment. I took Smite of Divine Judgment to Uber Shaper in this league. I was able to take that down with it. That was a very slow Uber Shaper. I might have detonated 50 volatile anomalies in the fight, but that skill, despite being bad, it's good enough to beat the game's content. I think a lot of spells are in that spot at the moment. And the biggest problem is not tier 17s. They get the blame for it, but it is map mod effect. Map mod effect scaling has destroyed people's conception of what a good skill is. Like, maps that have 8 mods and that have those map mods are amped up to 220% of baseline effect or whatever, those need to be just, like, that difficulty should exist, but it should not be hidden behind, like, your Atlas. It should be something that's clearly printed on the map. Hey, this is not a tier 16 map, this is a tier 24 map, or whatever they make it. That's the thing that I think is causing a lot of people to think skills are unplayable because they get crushed in a tier 17 or even a tier 16, but they're getting crushed in them because they've set up their Atlas to get them killed. And also not just to set up their Atlas to get them killed, but to make the monsters ridiculously tanky. Like, you can have things, the most extreme example I can think of, I actually did beat this boss, but it took a long time, like 20 minutes. I overbuffed a map boss through map mods. There is a map mod that exists for 50% chance for enemies to avoid freeze. I had that, except it was scaled up to, not freeze, avoid bleed. I had that, but at 87%. There is a map mod for 50% chance for enemies to block. I had that, except it was scaled up to 87%. And I had 50% chance for, 50% physical mitigation on enemies. That was scaled up to 87 as well. So I'm doing a bleed build. And I'm playing this in a tier 17 against an Abomination map boss. Now, okay, the correct plan at this point would have been to say, hey, you know what? You just stuffed up and walk out of the map. But I was determined, and I did get it down because the character was pretty much unkillable in them. Especially in Abomination, where you can just stand inside the purple swirly stuff, taking a lot of hits. Like, that just hits you every 200 milliseconds or so, and my character was set up so that I would always have Lucky Block active because of that, and I would be healing like 500 hit points per block, given that I was using the Surrender. So I'm dealing almost no damage, but I'm also almost unkillable in the fight, and I eventually did get it down. But this is this thing that's crazy where I have put myself in that position, not by my decision of putting that map into the map device. I put myself into that position by speccing into, was it 74% increased map mod effect, which was a decision that was made long ago. And that's the thing, that there's this delayed consequence of a bad decision that has come up, and has got me killed. Most people blame the decision they made recently, which is putting the tier 17 map in the map device, whereas actually the thing that was the problem was the decision they made ages ago when they spec 74% increased effective map mods. And then they didn't take that into account when they put the map in the map device, but they blamed the more recent decision, when actually the reason that they had that difficulty and a 20-minute Abomination boss fight was because of that mistake earlier. So anyways, rant about tier 17s out of the way. That's the thing that is the case, that if you're running tier 17 content that does not have a large amount of increased map modifier effect on it, or if you're running tier 16 content that has a modest to large amount of that, then most of the random spells can do it. And that's the nature of where we are at the moment. Okay. All right, rant over. I have noticed just from looking at my concurrent viewers and the like that a number of people have just joined the stream. Just an FYI, you can rewind the stream if you want, and you can watch it at higher speed until you catch up. You may or may not catch up because I might finish beforehand. But if you are feeling like you've missed stuff, then you can rewind at this point. But yeah, The idea with buffing things is trying to get it so that builds feel reasonably comparable to each other. They've got some sort of power milestone in mind they're trying to get. And I feel like the right power milestone is that a casual player can beat tier 17s without map mod effect, but not on their first try. When I say beat, I mean with 6 portals they can get there, but they can't do it on their first try. So Incinerate Eventing, I don't know enough about this skill to really say much about it. Infernal Cry has had its mana cost increased, which is probably not that... This means that Righteous Fire builds that want to use it, which tends to be early in progression, you can't reserve quite as much mana sometimes, but it's probably not really a big deal because Shield Charge is going to use a bunch too. There'll be some situations where this matters. Lightning Conduit of the Heavens. I want this skill to be just a bit better than this. I don't know that this is quite enough. Shocks as though dealing 39% more damage at gem levels 1 to 20. So Lightning Conduit of the Heavens is this really weird skill where it hits an AoE, but it has a cap on the number of targets it can hit. And because of that drawback, it has more power than it would otherwise have. So it's a pretty good skill in general, but it's not quite seen as being there. It's getting a slight buff here, but it's an interesting one. It really is one of those things that's good at content that doesn't kind of exist that much. Like, you don't have all that much content in the game where there's a moderate amount of tough monsters, like 6 really tough monsters in one place. The classic example where Lightning Conduit of the Heavens would shine is that Delve encounter where there are 6 rogue exiles you've got to fight. That thing that comes up all the time. So, one sec, I've just got to have a coughing fit. I'm just going to pause my... I'm just going to silence my stream while I do that, because I do not want that getting captured on the recording version. All right, sorry about that. I did not want to blow out anyone's eardrums with that cough, both people who are watching live and people who are watching it later. So that had to get through there. All right, Lightning Conduit of the Heavens. It's just one of those things that I feel like it's cool. I wanted to work with spell totems. There's just not quite the support for that at the moment. And yeah, basically, this isn't enough of a buff for it. If it's one of those skills that if it got a 10 or 15% buff, I think it would have been good. But shocking as though dealing 39% more damage is just, it's not as much as it sounds. Lightning Strike, projectiles deal 50% less damage with hits and elements. So note that that's the projectile component. The base strike is still dealing full damage. This is pretty much the nerf this skill needed to not be dominant. Note that this does not affect the Slayer versions of Lightning Strike all that much. It is substantial, but it's not crushing for them. And it is a much bigger effect on the Trickster versions because there's also the Trickster versions are getting hit with a bunch of other things. Ephemeral Edge is getting nerfed, a bunch of other stuff. Lightning Strike, still very playable. If you love the skill, you can still play it. Val Lightning Strike, I need to check if it's getting hit as well. Check that. Val Lightning Strike is getting nerfed really hard as well. But even then, it's probably not enough. Ultimately, Lightning Strike, if you genuinely enjoy Lightning Strike, keep playing it, it will be fine. If you don't genuinely enjoy Lightning Strike, then this is not going to make you want to play it. The thing I'm noticing though, Frostblades is kind of like, Frostblades is still worse than Lightning Strike, which I don't like. I like Frostblades. Frostblades is, I'm talking classic Frostblades here. It's a smart approach they've taken here, though, just making it so that the projectile components are definitely getting worse than they were, but the main strike component doesn't get worse. Lightning Tendrils of Eccentricity. This is a big boost to this skill. I still don't like the skill. I still don't like it at all. Lightning Tendrils of Escalation. This has a substantially slower base cast time and substantially more damage. This is a net buff. And yeah, Lightning Tendrils of Escalation is ahead, I believe, out of that. So it's substantially slower, but the damage boost is more than enough to make up for that. Molten Strike is getting the same things that is happening to Lightning Strike, except more so. And Molten Strike of the Zenith is getting getting like this is like one of the craziest sets of nerfs that I've seen, just in terms of just how substantial these nerfs are to Molten Strike of the Zenith, and it's probably still fine. Like, if you like the skill, it's probably still playable. One of the things with Molten Strike of the Zenith, though, it was a skill that was partly overperforming how good it was because it's better in Path of Building than it is in the real world, but at the same time, it was genuinely really good in the real world as well. Like, it was both very good and slightly overhyped. The skill is still probably fine. Yeah, there's people that are thinking it's still probably the best skill in the game, or the best attack skill in the game. The thing I always used to say about Molten Strike of the Zenith is I want you to imagine a thought experiment where you take the concept of Molten Strike of the Zenith and take it further. Imagine you have a skill that takes 5 seconds to charge up, and when you fire it off, it deals a quadrillion damage to everything on the screen and all around to 15 meters. Would this be a particularly good skill? Like, yes, it would be good in bossing, but even though the damage is literally 200 trillion DPS and it's projected to the entire screen, it has some real weaknesses too. Molten Strike of the Zenith has those same weaknesses. You can definitely get killed before the 5th shot goes off, or you can get yourself in a spot where you're forced to move before the 5th shot goes off. Molten Strike doesn't hit the whole screen. That is correct. People are saying in chat that like, this is, I'm wanting to take Molten Strike's weaknesses and amplify them to a ridiculous level, but also amplify the power of it to a ridiculous level. So I'm basically taking, as it's a thought experiment where you're taking the core of what makes Molten Strike of the Zenith what it is, and just amping it up to 1,000,000. So anyways, that's the sort of thought experiment that I use when I'm thinking about Molten Strike of the Zenith in general. I need to just mute my phone so that Discord notifications don't bounce in here, because I don't think we need to hear them all the time. One sec while we do that. Okay, I think that's on... Oops, that's not correct. That's the button I'm looking for. There we go. Cool. Okay, now I won't hear all those notifications, which does mean that people won't be able to get onto me, but that's unfortunate. Perforated Bloodshed, is this getting... I don't know enough about this skill to be sure whether this is significant or not. The spike being added in baseline, yeah, so the old quality is getting made baseline. Like, everything about this is getting better, but I don't know whether it's what it needs or not. Perforate of Duality is gaining its old quality effect baseline. Interestingly, a bunch of these changes here are actually nerfs to Ashes of the Stars, which is kind of funny. Like, its interaction with some of these really build enabling quality effects, where the 20 quality effect is getting rolled into the base gem. Anyways, Power Siphon is probably the one that we want to talk about here. Power Siphon is getting changed substantially. So, the baseline damage of it is getting nerfed really hard, but this power is being restored in a faster attack speed. The intention here is that this bypasses the ways that people have been playing Power Siphon, where they've been pairing it up with Locust Mine support. If you are direct attacking with Power Siphon, you are now going to have a lot more mana drain from the skill, which I feel like this is the sort of thing they would normally have compensated for. But the amount of damage that it's dealing is going down from... so it's losing 55%... losing 54%, which is the like, sort of something of the order 35% of the damage. Yeah, it is coming out worse overall. So 150% by 105% of... Yeah, okay. So even direct attack Power Siphon is worse than it was, but the changes are set up in a way that primarily affect Locust Mines. So Locust Mines gets all the drawback and none of the benefit. That said, Locust Mines Power Siphon is still so strong that it's probably going to be fine with 35% less. Direct attack Power Siphon is going to be slightly worse. So I don't think that this is enough of a nerf to kill Power Siphon Mines. I feel like once it gets going, it's still going to be explosive. Like, the damage that puts out during the campaign, really everything up to and including Black Star and Infinite Hunger, it's still just going to absolutely crush it. it's probably still gonna be an S tier skill for leveling, but it's gonna drop off earlier. I think the problems that you get with Power Siphon when you try to push it in Power Siphon Mines when you try to push it into tier 17s, those are going to kick in when you're trying to push it into Guardians. When you're trying to push it into Guardians, when you're trying to push it to Exarch and Eater, that's going to be where it becomes weaker. That's my feeling on Power Siphon Power Siphon Mines now. Still very strong day one, though. Especially if you already know what you're doing. I feel like it's probably the case that the path of least resistance to getting your 4 Void Stones is going to be to roll as Power Siphon Mines and then to respec to what you want to play when you have killed, maybe when you've killed Black Star and Infinite Hunger, and maybe when you're about to go to Exarch and Eater. That's my first thoughts on this. Power Siphon of the Archmage is getting changed around. That has a heavy mana drain on it, doesn't it? I'm going to just check that. Power Siphon of the Archmage. I'll check the details on this. Does this actually drain a bunch of mana or not? So, increases in... It does not have the Archmage mana drain effect. It just has a bunch of additional damage based upon the amount of lightning that you're doing. And... that said, this skill, I couldn't make it work as it was. And whilst it's going to feel smoother, it's going to do so much less damage that I'm just... I don't think I see it. I don't think I see it. Like, okay, it's going to feel really cruisy and smooth to use, but it's, yeah, the scaling on it, I could not make this work. People have tried it, other people have tried it as well, and I just have not seen it go that well. And there's no critical... I think there's crit related stuff on the base gem, isn't there? What was the crit thing on it? Oh, it's a culling strike. Yeah, there is crit stuff on base gem. That's not there, but yeah. Purifying Flame of Revelations. This is going to be dealing a little bit more damage, so it's slight buff on that. Ray Spectre of Transience, faster to cast, and critical strike scales with it, but Ray Spectre of Transience is just too clunky, I think most people find. This is the one that forces you to use specters that are present in the zone. Reap is getting a pretty substantial buff, actually. Like, all of the baseline DOT skills that are getting buffed. The thing is that most of the time when people play Reap, they scale the hit damage, but you can make it work. You can make the dot damage work. Righteous Fire of Arcane Devotion. This is gaining additional cast speed at gem levels. I don't think it has that at all, does it? Righteous Fire of Arcane Devotion. Doesn't have anything at all on it currently. It has no cast speed currently. So it's still the old skill that it used to be, but it's also going to be something that can be used as a self-cast buff. Now, you kind of want to have low maximum... like... Okay. Hear me on this. Imagine that you don't have very much maximum mana. You treat the degen of Righteous Fire of Arcane Devotion as a nuisance rather than as something that's a goal to try and scale. You don't have very much energy shield. You're mostly a life-based build, but you run Righteous Fire of Arcane Devotion. You then use it solely as a buff in order to get more cast speed. I think there's a potential, like it's more cast speed. That's substantial on a self-cast build. This is a big boost to it here, I think. So I feel like there's a bunch of stuff you could do here. Yeah, you definitely need to solve mana on your main skill. There's a bunch of ways you can do that. So low mana life tap main skill is one option people have mentioned. Maybe you can make it work with an Enduring Mana Flask. When I say low maximum mana, I don't mean monstrously low. Like, I don't mean you're artificially lowering it. I just mean that you're not investing in it at all. So essentially, this is like having, like, Righteous Fire can also be done for more damage with spells, but here you can do it with Righteous... I want to think about this. I think there's some potential in this concept. So you get more cast speed here, and you can also just use the classic Righteous Fire as well to get, you already have more spell damage on it. Are these stacked with each other really well? Maybe there's a setup that you can do. Maybe there's a setup you can do there and just have both of them going at the same time. Hirigans is asking, just for clarification on Righteous Fire of Arcane Devotion, does this drain your mana? No, it deals damage to you as fire damage per second. So by default, it will attack your energy shield first, then your life. If you're using things like Mind Over Matter, that may be modified, but by default, it's going to go for your life if you have no energy shield at all. And there's also the possibility that you can use Vaal Clarity in certain situations as well. Can you have two Righteous Fires? That is a good question, actually. I hadn't thought of this. Maybe you can use both, maybe you can't. Is there any clarification on this? So... Okay, this is one that we've got to test. This has to be tested before the game goes live. Can you benefit both from Righteous Fire and Righteous Fire of Arcane Devotion at the same time? If you can, then I think using both of them as generic spellcasting supports could be a huge deal, because there's a lot of power in that. That then also means that you want to at least consider Ichimonji as a way of... I don't think you use this. I just want to check the exact stats on this. It's how much increase? Oh, it's only 10% increased effective buffs on you. Nah, that's not enough. I think it's the only source of this is the only way of getting increased effective buffs on the player, because Righteous Fire and Righteous Fire of Arcane Devotion would be too much. So Moogle is saying that only the stronger one affects. Okay, does it actually overwrite them? Because we're not considering dealing any damage with Righteous Fire. We're just using them as a buff, and they buff different things. So it's there. They might not replace each other anymore. This needs clarification. Oh, that's the screen that we had there. This needs clarification, basically. I do not think we can answer this authoritatively now. If right now it only lets you have one of them, that's a bad sign, but it feels like the game is telling you to play both of them at the moment. Assuming that your life and mana are low enough that you can manage the heal on that. And then, like, there's a whole bunch of things you could do with this. I reckon there's some real potential to do some weird stuff there. But like, this is like, feels like you want to play a chieftain hit build with Reap or something. That feels like one of the things you could do with that, because Righteous Fire is building up your spell damage, you're getting faster casting, but that only applies to instant application damage, doesn't really scale up most ailments. Or maybe you could go, yeah. There's an idea in there. There's ideas in my head. We're going to clarify how things work before going too far into that. Scorching Ray. Additional debuff stages now add 80% more damage. That's substantial. Quality now provides fire exposure, applies instead. Oh, okay, so they have rolled in some of the old effects, but this is miles better than it was, but it's like Scorching Ray is something that's missing a bit in power at the moment and needs quite a bit. Likewise, Scorching Ray of Immolation, and it doesn't feel like a good main skill. And if you're playing around with Scorching Ray, you probably, like, once you start scaling fire damage over time, everything pushes you towards going Chieftain Hinokora explosions. And once you start doing that, everything pushes you towards proliferating ignites. And that means that you're pushed away from Scorching Ray and into using something else, like it could be Fireball or whatever. And so yeah, there's a bunch of things that are coming up there. Okay, so the interesting point that's been raised there, that perhaps because Righteous Fire of Arcane Devotion has a text, this is modified by effects of spell damage, and Righteous Fire does not do that, even though it has a more spell damage. So maybe it is the case that you can only use one of them. One turning the other off is perhaps intended as a result of that. That's one that we'll have to get clarification on, though. I will put a ping to Nick from GGG to clarify that, because that will be an FAQ a lot of people will have, I reckon. Like, my first thought is, yeah, you want to use both of these, but if you can only use one of them, then they're just for different purposes to each other. Our Scourge Arrow is getting a huge amount of extra damage here. So this is 25% more damage than it used to deal. This is a big deal, I reckon. This could be really, really good. Oh, it's been answered on Reddit. Okay, cool. Thanks for that, Moogle, is clarifying there. Yeah, don't send me stuff on Discord at the moment. I've had to mute my phone because otherwise it's just going to go going ding, 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 ding. And that's why I've got that set up as it is. Shield Crush of the Chieftain. This has a better base attack time, and what else is it doing? It's... Everything about this is better, and everything about Shield Crush of the Chieftain is better. I want to check something with this. Does this have anything that prevents you from using it to ignite? I think it does. I think it has something that is added in there. It does not really. Maybe this is something that's like an interesting, different take on the Chieftain Ascendancy if people are interested in playing something different with it. You could conceivably use this. The sorts of things that you would use with Shield Crush of the Chieftain would, or the same sort of character that would use that, could also be used with Glacial Shield Swipe in conjunction with Cold Fire Support. So you would then get, okay, only 50% less damage with elements on this, but the base damage on this is so absurdly high that there is definitely something you could do with this setup. Glacial Shield Swipe with Cold Fire Support as one thing, and Shield Crush of the Chieftain, the entire setup being Ignite based, and then you're using the Hinekora Explosion setups. So that's something that is at least in my brewing mind, because there's something really fun about the Chieftain Ascendancy. I honestly think it's the most fun Ascendancy in the game at the moment. Siphoning Trap. This is getting a buff, no one cares. Soul Rend. This is getting a buff, and people might care about this one, because it's like 18% more damage with all of the Chaos Dot spells. That's quite a bit, and... except for Bane. I did mention, I did actually say last night when I was talking about this that I didn't want them to buff Bane. Bane can be the utility thing with it. There's a bunch going on with Chaos Dot. I think overall the package might be there now. Overall, I think the package is sufficient there. Spellslinger, this is substantial, right? Like, this is getting miles better. Spellslinger was unplayable for a long time, or at least not totally unplayable, but only in specific niches. It also gets a mastery later as well. So this is something that's yeah, like pretty good. Splitting Steel projectiles can no longer return. This is one of those ones where the Discord soundboard has something perfect for this moment, which I've not got Discord open, so I can't do, but it's just a sound that goes wah, wah, wah. That said, the baseline damage on this is getting improved a little bit. It's probably worse overall though, as Splitting Steel was quite dependent upon like some of the projectile return shenanigans. Spellslinger definitely has some setups. Yeah, like there is the classic Scion setup. I do want to warn people about this one, right? So there's a classic Scion setup a while ago that used to use the old version of one of the nodes that's been changed since. I think it was old Gladiator, had 20% more physical damage over time. I don't think that's still around. I'll just confirm that it's not still around. So this is the Ascendant. Ascendant, and then the Gladiator node that exists on it. What is it doing now? Gladiator does not have any of that on it. No. Okay, cool. That's what I thought. So basically, the old version of that build was using physical damage over time skills that were tied to the auto cast through Spellslinger, and ultimately you wanted to replace that with Poet's Pen, and it used Corrupting Fever. Corrupting Fever's had a bunch of changes to it as well. A whole bunch of things that don't really work all that well. Essentially, the Spellslinger setup there, it was serviceable for a period, but it lost that Ascendancy damage multiplier, and there's also been a number of map mods that do not play well with it since. So ultimately, I'm not sure that I'm sold on the physical DOT Ascendant coming back now. Even though Spellslinger's buffs are substantial, I think the rest of the package is not there. Corrupting Fever in particular, I think, is just not in a good spot currently either. So yeah, I'm not one on that. That said, you could go Gladiator and just apply Bleed for the purposes of Bleed Explosions. Or you could go something else that's Tree South and then steal Bleed Explosions via Forbidden Jewels. There's a bunch of things that you could conceivably do there. Anyways, projectiles no longer return, we mentioned already. Stormburst is getting a Giga buff here, right? Like this was already a playable skill in conjunction with totems. And this is correct me if I'm wrong, right? This is a Giga buff to Stormburst totems, which was already at least a moderately playable skill. Like this is 20% more cast speed on it. And that's really, really big. Mana cost doesn't matter on the totems, but even if you wanted to manually cast it, everything about this is better. If you are manually casting it, there's that new channeling support that you can use. Just feels like it's really, really strong. Yeah, Tatantiel's build was always fine. Tatantiel has a build that is a Stormburst totem build, and it's like Tatantiel tends to play in hardcore quite a bit, and so it's optimized to be on the safer end, and it is just something that's worth playing. Like that, it always has been. This is going to make it better, a lot better. So yeah, Tatantiel, good day to be him. Summon Chaos Golem. This is huge. It's losing the physical damage reduction, and it's instead going to grant you 17 Chaos resistance at all gem levels. And that can be scaled up quite a lot. Also, Golems are granting Chaos damage, granting unconditional damage over time multiplier as well. So both Chaos damage and Fizz mitigation are good stats, but 17% Chaos damage is much better than 5% Fizz mit. That's really, really, really strong. So Chaos Golem is much better. Now, of course, you got the problem with Chaos Golems dying. There's also been a condensing of things within the Elementalist Ascendancy around Golems as well. They've been getting buffs as well. So there's actually quite a lot that's going on here. Yeah, basically, I really like what I see here. Chaos Golem of the Maelstrom is now a very different identity because you're giving up something of value. The Chaos damage over time is something of value. The dot multi is something of value. But instead you're granting significantly more wither stacks to enemies that are nearby you. So it's a different source of Chaos damage multiplier here as well. Quality now causes minions to have increased effect of withered. How does a minion have increased effect of withered? So that means that you apply wither, it applies wither independently. The one that just is stronger wins out, I guess. That's substantial. Golems now grant way more damage at gem levels, at all gem levels, and also increased area of effect unconditionally to you at all gem levels as well. So again, all the golems are getting buffed, like people were mentioning here. A lot of them are getting substantial ones. This is a pretty big... This one's a pretty substantial increase. Flame Golem was at the weaker end, but this is huge. Likewise, Ice Golems are getting better. Okay, granted, in some weird circumstances, the accuracy might be worse than it was, but this is, yeah, generally better. Lightning Golem is better, but not really at high gem level. At high gem level, it was... Oh, no, you've also got the flat mana regen as well. Yeah, these are fantastic. The Golem buffs are great now. One thing you got to be aware of, if you're playing an Elementalist and you either intentionally or accidentally lose a Golem, so intentionally if you're detonating them with the Maw of Mischief, but also you can unintentionally lose one because one of them walks into a slam. Some things about your character might stop working until it comes back. Like, for instance, you might suddenly go from always hitting to not having enough accuracy to always hit. Or alternately, you might go from having enough mana regen to sustain your spell spamming to not having enough mana regen to sustain spells. Or you might go from capped or even overcapped chaos resist to not having full cap on the chaos resist. So you just want to be aware of that. It's one of those things that could always come up, but it can be quite a bit nastier than it was. Raging Spirit of Enormity is... yeah, that's just miles better, but it kind of needs it. I didn't think Raging Spirit of Enormity was ever really used. Although, actually, that's a lot of crit multi on something that I think always crits, doesn't it? Summon Raging Spirit of Enormity. Am I right that it always crits? I want to just check that. Summon Raging Spirit of Enormity. Summon Raging Spirit of Enormity is always critting, and that means that the crit multi on it is fantastic. Crit multi on it is just a massive multiplier to the amount of damage you do. This is a huge buff to this effect. Quality grants minion move speed, which this thing needs. How many Summon Raging Spirits of Enormity can you have? It's 6 at a time. Yeah, this is a real thing. Reaper of Eviscerating. Quality now causes minions to have a chance to aggravate bleeding, which is big. That's, yeah, as long as you're inflicting bleed already. And some Reaper of Revenants now can now get an extra Reaper at high gem level. Some Skeletal Mages have a chance to inflict ailments. Okay, here's Stone Golem, which people were talking about. Golems now grant 20% increased defenses. Again, this can scale up quite a lot. There is a lot of sources of increased effective golems on golem buffs. This is a big deal. Elementalist is getting a lot in this. Elementalist is really getting a lot in this. There is this thing with Shaper of Flames is losing a bunch of stuff, but what Shaper of Flames is losing is fine because the rest of the Ascendancy makes up for it. And ultimately, the Ascendancy was a 2-point. No, it's not fair to say it was a 2-point Ascendancy. There was good stuff in it, but yeah, it's looking a lot better now. Okay, what else do we have here? Void Sphere of Rending. This is getting a bunch of extra range and damage speed. Yep, everything about that is better. Vortex is getting some of the losses it suffered in the past back. Probably not enough. I don't think this is enough for it to be good again. I mean, yeah. Cold Dot has some things going for it, but it's not. I don't think it's quite there. Likewise for Projection. Likewise, Wintertide Brand was the strongest of the cold spells. Wintertide Brand actually, it's losing some damage at low gem level. It's gaining it at high, but it's losing it at low. They don't want to have a situation where Wintertide Brand becomes as dominant in levels as it could be. Vortex is something that you do have to actively cast. So it is not instant again. But there is a spot where it would be good as a slow cast spell. But yeah, it's definitely... I don't think it's there. And that's the interesting point that Bashers makes, that it wasn't scaling as much as it should have. It had the worst scaling in the game. But that's now fixed. But yeah, I'm not sold on Vortex there. Or Cold Dot as a package, except maybe Wintertide Brand dominant base builds. Alright, let's have a look at Winter Orb. Winter Orb is a skill that some people love. I still am sick of it from when it was meta in Synthesis. Now, I know Synthesis is a long time ago, but it was that dominant. It was like much more hegemonic than Lightning Strike in 325. In fact, it was more hegemonic than Lightning Strike in 325, Hexblast Mines in 325, and what's the other thing? Archmage, Ice Nova, Frostbolts. It's more dominant than those three put together. So let's have a look and see how they're changing this now. It's getting more damage at the baseline. So it's going from 60 to 80 effectiveness of added damage, and the scaling of damage is comparable to that. So it's getting a third more damage. Maximum of 8 stages rather than 10. 30% increased duration per stage instead of 25. And projectile frequency while channeling is being nerfed a little bit. Ultimately, okay, this is definitely a buff. The idea here is that you get the old power, but you get it with less standing still and channeling. And that's the overall setup with Winter Orb. This is definitely a buff. This is definitely better than it was. Would I say I am hyped by it? No, but I am biased because I still hate how dominant this skill used to be. But that said, if you like Winter Orb, I think you definitely can be excited to play it now. If you don't like Winter Orb, it's not so good that it's like Synthesis, where it felt like you're doing it wrong if you're not playing it. But it is definitely, and actually it was Synthesis and Betrayal as well. It actually was not as bad. To answer the question in chat, was this worse than Cyclone at its height? No, it wasn't. Cyclone was the most dominant a skill has ever been. Then I think Winter Orb was the third most dominant a skill has ever been. But yeah, people who like Winter Orb, I think this is good news for you. I'm not one of you, though. I'm not one of you at all. We already mentioned Wintertide Brand. Now, Val Blight, same buffs as the other spells of its ilk. Cold Snap, 20%. That's the same as the other skills of its ilk. Val Cyclone, this is a meme. This has always been a meme. And it is now getting... yeah, it is not getting anything there. Val Lightning Strike is not getting deleted the way that it could have been. It's getting nerfed pretty hard. Like, everything about Lightning Strike is worse than it was, but it's still... like, Lightning Strike / Val Lightning Strike is still very, very, very strong. And then we have Val Reap. Val Reap is getting a 15% damage buff. There are any sorts of drawbacks that are coming in with this. It is... no, everything is upside. It's just 15% better than it was, and it was already fine. So basically, everything that is coming out here about Reap and like the physical spells are feeling like they're substantially better. Everything in those bundles around physical spells is better than it was. So that's all kind of solid stuff. Support gem changes. Now, note that Arcane Surge is across the board better than it used to be. It's getting 20% cast speed instead of 10. Supported skills now deal 14 to 35% more spell damage while you have Arcane Surge. Wow, that's a lot better. Doesn't gain as much mana regenerate, but it grants you more of everything else. Arcane Surge support feels like it's really strong now, right? 35% more damage with the skill. It grants you Arcane Surge, which is good. You probably actually want to level this if you've got the ability. Maybe not all the way to 20, but like maybe to 16 or so. And yeah, that's like really, really solid. Archmage is getting nerfed, but it is still fine. But the Ice Nova Frostbolt's Hierophant package has been brought down enough. I feel like Ball Lightning of Orbiting Archmage is still perfectly fine. Awaken Spell Echo, they're really doubling down on making this chase, aren't they? It's no longer going to cost as much, and it's going to have... like, it's... wow. They're really making that into a chase roll there. That's nuts. Nuts. Metridium Fields has got a good point there. The dot multi on Chaos Golem is a huge buff to Fizz dot and also Chaos dot spells. Like, yes, that is correct. Like, I think there's... as long as you're willing to... as long as you can solve some way of recasting your Golem when it dies, which can just be making it tanky enough that it doesn't die very often, then that's fine. And there's also the ability to use Elementalist Flame... to use... get the dot multi off the Chaos Golem and then be an Ignite build as well, which is honestly where I'm looking at going at the moment. Everything that I'm seeing here is just screaming to me play Elementalist version of Ignite. Although then again, I also want to play Chieftain if I want to Ignite. Decisions. I mean, you can go Elementalist, you can go Shaper of Flames, and then you can get your Obliteration pops. Not Obliteration proper, but the Propane Boom from the Occultist. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Decay support is getting buffed, but not nearly enough. Decay support has a funny history, right? So when it was added to the game, I think it was in 2.0, there was a beta where it was absolutely busted. Like, it was just so good. You could one-tap everything in the campaign, and it got released to the live servers something like half as strong as it was in the beta, and it was still good. But then over time, it's just been power crept into complete oblivion. Now, Shaper of Flames has come up. Shaper of Flames is being nerfed, but the whole package is still fine. Shaper of Flames' most important effect, the ability to make non-fire damage ignite, that's still there. Greatest Spell Echo is getting improved. All of the echoing effects are getting buffed there. Again, it's all these things that improve the ability of skills that directly cast spells are getting buffed. Infused Channeling is getting a substantial improvement. Is that enough? I don't think it is, but it's still substantial, still significant. Intensify, cost reservation multiplier is more favorable, and oh wow, Intensify is better now. So Cracklance Classic Edition gets quite a bit out of this. That's the one that comes to mind as the thing that has the most synergy with Intensify. Pinpoint is similar. This is miles better than it used to be. So Pinpoint's an interesting one. It causes your skill to fire, like, it starts out like not quite greater multiple projectiles, but it starts out firing out 3 additional projectiles. But then you trade those in, and it starts dealing less and less, firing less and less projectiles, sacrificing damage projection in exchange for additional power. And Pinpoint's a really cool support. I like the idea a lot. Basically rewards you for standing still, but only when you want that reward. And otherwise, it functions like a multiple projectile support. I really like this support a lot. Returning projectiles is getting nerfed further. Still fine. Returning projectiles is now in this position where it's no longer often the best support, but it's probably still going to end up being in your top 6 on a lot of builds. I expect it'll still be used a lot, despite the fact that this is a big decrease the amount of damage that it does. And part of the reason for that is that the returning projectiles on the way back, they still get another hit, so it causes causes things like restarting leech if you need that. Causes things like restarting life gain on hit, all sorts of stuff along those lines. Sacrifice is getting numerical buffs again. This has been playable for a while, but in convoluted setups. It's still very convoluted to use. Spell Echo we talked about before when we were talking about the Awaken version, and Unleash is also come out with the Awaken version as well. Okay, so Ascendancy changes. Berserker is getting comprehensively reworked. Defy Pain is a big change here. So this is the one that was causing you to get tankier and tankier until eventually you then took your 10th hit and you took a massive amount of physical reflected damage imposed on you. So it causes you to gain Defiance for 10 seconds on losing life to an enemy hit, no more than once per 0.3 seconds. Gains you a small amount of the effect of Defiance of Destiny, and causes you to lose all Defiance when you hit 10 Defiance. I assume it still has that drawback that it used to have that requires you to be Phys Reflective immune or to have massive physical mitigation for it to work. Blitz is being completely purged, which is a big loss, but it is also granting something else that's good in its place. 30% of your life leech is instant. So basically the old things that made Berserker good are gone, but there's something new here, and that's behind Aspect of Carnage, which is the one that causes you to take more damage. So kind of tricky there. Flawless Savagery does something strong. Like, ultimately, Berserker is just different. I think there's people that are going to look at this and say, hey, this is a huge set of buffs, and there's going to be people that look at this and say this is a huge set of nerfs. It's in this weird spot where it feels like it's going to be the ultimate, like, it's encroaching into the design space of the Slayer a lot. The Slayer doesn't have all that much mitigation. It does have the endurance charge node, but Masterful Form, I think it is. But it doesn't have all that much mitigation, but it's got a bunch of sustain. And the Berserker is getting a bunch of new sources of sustain here that are coming up. Like, they're changing around its identity completely. I don't know where this is going to end up. I'm not league starting this. I'm not league starting this, but it's like, it's just all over the place. It's weird. And I'm liking how, like, in chat, no one agrees how good 30% instant life leech is. It is a pretty big deal in terms of sustain, but then at the same time you can get more of the stat from others. You can get some of the stat from other sources as well. The Claw Mastery that gave it has been nerfed, although it's still going to be much had. This really is one of those things that I think Berserker, there's going to be some content it's terrible in, and there's going to be some content it's great in. The existing Berserker builds were based around the way that it worked before, so they're not going to work. It's all different. And I feel, though, that, like, taking a 4-pointer for 30% of your life leeches instant is a lot. Like, yeah, Blitz was the attack speed one as well, right? That was the thing that got you crazy attack speed, which would have been amazing in conjunction with how it was working. So Blitz was the one that allowed you to get 2% more. It was 40% more attack speed, but also nerfed your chance to inflict critical strikes. So that was pretty substantial in terms of restarting your leech. And now, with the loss of all the crazy attack speed you used to get in the Ascendancy, like, you actually don't have as much power out of that instant leech as you would have had otherwise. So it's, yeah, kind of all over the place. One thing I will say, like, that's coming up a bit in chat is, like, the question of how much difference is there between 30%, 5%, 10% instant leech. The difference is not when you are at god level power. The difference is earlier. When you are at god level power, this is not a thing. This doesn't matter. Basically, it's earlier in progression than that. I think Berserker's top end is much worse than it used to be. Berserker's top end was, like, could be really crazy just because at some point you get limited by your attack speed and you could get your blitz charges and get 40% more attack speed off it. But prior to that, Berserker is probably going to be better. I'm kind of curious if we see a situation where people level as Berserker and then change out of it. Kind of hard to know on that. Anyways, Berserker, my current position is I am not sold on it. Fortitude now causes you to have your maximum fortification and nearby allies count as having fortification equal to yours. That's interesting because this is what they nerfed earlier. Like, this was 20, people were all taking it. Now they've just gone, all right, well, we're just going to give it back at full power. And also nearby allies having fortification equal to yours. This is really good on builds that aren't making melee attacks. Like, this is champion bows and the like. Now, 3% more armor and evasion rating per fortification above 20. It's kind of hard to get above 20. 3% increased attack speed per fortification above 20. How much can you get? You can get like +5 or so. Oh, sorry, Ancestral Fury in the Berserker. I think we just mentioned this quickly, didn't we? It was like, cause your strike skills to target the previous location they were used. Like, that's clunky. There's times it's amazing, there's times it's not. It depends how far you're moving. That's the expense of Flawless Savagery. Which one was Flawless Savagery again? That was the Flawless Savagery. I'll check that one. It's increased critical strike chance and crit multi. Oh, it's the one that was granting a bunch of flat fizz early on as well. And yeah, so basically all of the sources of this effect that exist, wrong thing, are they're clunky because the additional target, you have to have moved far enough for it to work. So, like, it's, yeah. Like I said, I'm not sold on I'm not sold on everything that's being changed with Berserker. It has its uses, but that thing has its uses. There are sources of this effect that exist, and they have their uses, but they're not as good as people intuitively think they are. Because if you haven't moved, then the repeat doesn't happen. So yeah, it's kind of all messy. Okay, so anyways, let's jump back to the champion. Is what we wanted to look at, because I think it's in a better spot and we can say more about it. So there are a number of ways of getting Unstoppable Hero to do more, but it's kind of difficult. So 10 while focused you can get, so that's not all that much uptime, and you probably aren't that interested in using focus for this. Then you got 15 with Madness, that's not happening, and you can get 10 from Uber Exile gloves. So basic, and I think you can get 3 on the tree, right, or replica badge. So there's a few things you can get. There's like yeah, there's a few sources of it that exist, but it's you're not getting a lot of this. I want to just check Fortitude, the current setup of the champion. I want to verify, because they did change a bunch of things with it. I want to just verify what the actual layout currently is. Fortitude is currently a 2-pointer, and then the thing behind it is Unstoppable Hero. That's the current setup, and that's the one that affects your allies as well. So the one that's being changed is the 4-pointer here. Okay. The fact that it is the one that's being changed means you just don't take it. There's plenty on the champion as well. Like, you've got the aura effect stuff. What's the 30% increase? Inspirational is great. Go to check if that's changed or not. You've got the adrenaline stuff. Like, there's a lot of stuff you want in here. Yeah, you gain adrenaline for 20 seconds when you reach low life. That's fantastic. You got fortitude, and then you can take one other thing after that. So there's a fair bit of good stuff in there. And then Unstoppable Hero you just ignore. Worthy Foe no longer requires Conqueror and has U-Taunt on hit. And this is now Conqueror Ascendancy passive. It's being replaced with Worthy Causes, which is banner related. So Worthy Foe is being separated out. That's oh wow, that's a quite strong one. So Conqueror and Worthy Foe exist there. Yeah, there's a lot in the champion. Champion is really good now. Champion definitely wants to be used in conjunction with Perseverance. The thing with Unstoppable Hero, the reason I'm not sold on this 3% more armor and evasion rating, you might use it in some builds, like with Perseverance, as people are saying, but the reason I'm not completely sold on it is that this is a difficult setup to make. Like, there's a lot of messing around to get this setup going, and you're forced into the Exarch gloves, which I think, like, you probably use the Exarch gloves and then maybe nothing else after that. I think Champion is now solidifying itself back in the position where it is the defensive thing if you don't quite want to go as all in on defense as the Juggernaut does, and then Champion is probably where you want to be. It's going to be weaker defensively than Trickster was in 325, but it's not going to be much worse. It's all looking fine. Harmony of Purpose in the Guardian. Now, I just want to quickly remind myself which one that was. Harmony of Purpose, because I'm... Oh, that's the Link one. Okay, so the Guardian is gaining a new Ascendancy node. Random Shrine buff every 10 seconds, which has been on Daughter of Shabi and was quite solid. Not necessarily amazing, but solid. Unwavering Faith passive has been changed as well, so let's go check that one out again. What was Unwavering Faith again? Unwavering Faith was the one that was auras from your skills grant bonuses to your allies, and that was already quite good, but it's being changed. It's a 4-pointer, and it's going to grant 50% reservation efficiency, which is a lot, and that is gated behind Radiant Faith, which you still take. Okay, no, the confusing thing here, that this is going to be the annoying thing, right? Grants armor equal to 25% of your reserve mana to your allies, and then this one that's behind it is then going to grant you mana reservation efficiency, which is then going to break that. You're going to be able to fix that by speccing into new things, but it's really good. And yes, you will be speccing this on a lot of... you will be pulling this with Forbidden Jewels. Guardian Spellslinger sounds spicy, but I actually think you're right. That does look like it's... as long as you can benefit from all of the Summon Sentinel of Radiance effects on it. So you need to be dealing damage that benefits from flat. So you need to gain Wrath and Anger. Hatred doesn't really matter. But you need... So that's from not from the Sentinel of Radiance, that's from Unwavering Crusade. That's spicy, but I think it works, hey. So here you're going Unwavering Faith and Unwavering Crusade. That is all your points. I wonder what sort of skills you would use with that. You could probably use a lot. Hey, what is Wrath? Is Wrath actually has percentage increase, percentage more lightning damage, doesn't it? It's not. Let me just confirm that. It's flat to attacks and multiplicative to spells. Yeah, so spell lightning damage is... if you're dealing lightning damage, you're gaining a benefit from that. And Hatred was... What's current Hatred? But all these things got changed recently, so that's why I'm having to check it. Physical added as extra cold. So if you were to have a spell that deals native fizz that's converted to lightning... it can benefit from all three of those auras. Native fizz that is already converted to lightning by the gem. I'm trying to think what the best example of that would be. Like maybe... Is that Crack Lance? Is Crackling Lance native fizz or not? No, it is native lightning. So that doesn't gain the benefit of that Hatred gets out of that. There are things like... maybe Wave of Conviction? So you're thinking of Divine Eye here. We're wanting to trigger this though. Wave of Conviction you don't want to trigger. What is there that you can trigger that starts out fizz and converts to fire? Absolution doesn't work because a lot of the power of it is tied up in the gem. Let's go Converted to Conversion. This will be the way to find this out. So damage conversion. What we want here is skills that have converted to. So Absolution of Inspiring is the one that... Is that the one that's more minion heavy, or is it... This is the one where they're your cheer squad, isn't it? Anyways, it still has... You're giving up too much power for that on a spell that is going to be not... Divine Retribution is kind of funny. Like, that is a spell that converts to lightning, but it's kind of conditional. Like, it's also the weakest of those things. I'm just looking for ones that aren't strength-based at the moment. I'm reading everything that I can't... Oh, Penance... No, Penance Brand doesn't trigger usefully, does it? So it's not useful to trigger. Purifying Flame is triggerable. This deals 300%. It's... Yeah, it's a good point. Transmuted Absolution might be the option, actually. As that's one to keep in mind. You get a sense here. So this is 50% convert to fire. I thought it was convert to lightning. I mean, you could just use a physical spell and convert it to lightning with via other means. This is physical, convert to fire again. Is there anything else that... Stormburst is not triggerable. And Wave of Conviction we mentioned. Yeah, there's like a bunch of things that don't play very well with triggering. So I reckon maybe you just want a natively fizz spell like Exsanguinate that you then use fizz to lightning, which is a low scaling anyway. Like, it's a low mana cost scaling, right? 20%. So Exsanguinate, fizz to lightning support, convert the rest to lightning on the gem. Then that gets multiplied. You get your fizz added as extra cold, which is a bonus from Hatred. You get your flat fire. So there's a bunch of things that are scaling your damage in various ways. So you're ending up doing tri-element damage with Exsanguinate. Yeah, Reap is another example you could trigger as well. So either Exsanguinate or Reap seem to work here, depending upon the way that you want to project damage. But all of this feels like it feels like there's a build there. It needs to be triggered because we're talking Spellslinger Pathmaker. That's the reason it's got to be something that is that works with triggers. Or yeah, Bladefall Blade Blast is interesting as well. So you could have, yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff you could do with this. I reckon there is a build around this. So this is Guardian Fizz triggers is what we're talking about here. And someone want to make a note to me in Discord. If you're still there, so Moogle, can you just send me a ping in Discord to go give some thought to Guardian, Spellslinger, Bladefall Blade Blast with Lightning Conversion. And there's just so many other things you can do because you're getting all your auras directly from being the Guardian Ascendancy. There's some cool stuff there that's like may or may not work, but at least there's some cool ideas. Okay, Hierophant is getting a pretty substantial nerf here to the Archmage package as well. I mentioned a couple of times that the Freesia Ascendancies allowed GGG to test what was overpowered on the skill basis and what was overpowered on the Ascendancy basis. And this here is an example where Hierophant, they've nerfed Archmage a little bit, but not very much. They've nerfed Ice Nova of Frostbolts a little bit, but they've nerfed the Hierophant Ascendancy as well. It's not crushed, but it is nerfed moderately hard. Now, the big question is, Archmage Ball Lightning of Orbiting, is it a thing? I think the answer is yes, it's a thing, but it's not outstanding. So, Hierophant, I think, is still... I think the existing Hierophant builds are still probably alive. They're just no longer meta. And the totem versions, the Stormburst totems is going to be fantastic. So Tatantiel's build there is the one there. Yes, there's a huge nerf to Indigon. That is a good point. Indigon needed it, though. Indigon had it coming. Now, Saboteur, we have some big changes here. Firstly, we have a half-strength Nimbus thing on it, which is reasonably strong. They come back at full damage, so it's definitely strong. This is from Blind Prophet. It's yeah, like this is just genuinely quite good on a lot of builds. Then we have this thing, which is not good enough. Critical strike chance is lucky. Damage with hits is unlucky. This is one of the bad nodes from the Gambler Ascendancy. It's not enough. I'm just not sold on it at all. Critical strike chance being lucky is good, but damage being unlucky is a real drawback. And ultimately, even when critical strike lucky is at its best, it's only 50% more crits, give or take a bit. So not sold on that. That's an interesting question. Does this work with traps and mines here? I think the answer is probably no. I don't think it's yeah. I think would it return to you or would it return to the trap? You have to test that with the Nimbus in standard. Bomb Specialist Ascendancy now hits a 30% to deal 50% more area damage. So that's now 15% more damage rather than 10% more. And 30% chance to take 50% less damage from hits. Not quite enough. Ultimately, Saboteur needed more than this. Question about, can you get lucky damage to cancel out? Yes, you can. Lucky and unlucky cancel each other out, but lucky damage is pretty limited in where you can get it. Basically, the drawback on this is substantial enough that I'm not interested, unless you are... There might be the odd weird spot where you've got almost no variance on your attacks between top and bottom, and then in that case, there's almost no drawback on damage with hits being unlucky. But even then, critical strike chance being lucky is, like, it's good, but it's kind of marginal even as an entire ascendancy. So yeah, you could poison with lucky. Like, that actually, Dante's comment in chat is probably right here. Poisoning with lucky is something you could do. So the damage with hits being unlucky doesn't come back and bite you. But even like, and then there is Perfect Agony, which got buffed a lot in 325, and no one ended up playing it still. There's something that you could do there, but ultimately, surely you just play Assassin instead. Assassin has better crit on it than crit chances lucky, I think. Trickster, nerfed, but very much not dead. Polymath, if you have 9 stacks of this, you go from 127% base damage to 118% base damage if you still allocate it, which you probably still do because it's still good. That's 8% less damage on your character or so. Not even 8%, 7.2% less damage on your character. That's still fine because Trickster was good enough that it can live with that. And Escape Artist is getting nerfed more decisively than that, but it is not crushing. So 5 goes to 4. I had suspected that was going to be the case. 6 goes to 8. I had previously suspected 6 might go to 7. This means that you are still using Necrotic Armor, you are still using a Lich's Circlet on a Trickster in general, but it's, just not, like, the Ascendancy is not as nuts as it was, but it's still fine. The other thing is that you still have the option, the rest of Trickster is so good that if you don't want one of these nodes now, you can still take something else. Like, you've got the option of still using it because they're both good enough to take, but also the rest of the Ascendancy is so good that you can just go, oh, you know what? I'm no longer interested in Polymath. I'm going to take Heartstopper instead because Heartstopper is good and people don't take it normally. Or you're going to go, I'm going to take One Step Ahead because One Step Ahead is good and maybe you prefer it to something else. Basically, the whole Ascendancy is still fine. The thing that's noticeable is that because there were nerfs to Lightning Strike and also Ephemeral Edge, you're not going to build things the same way. You're definitely not going to use the Ephemeral Edge Voice of the Storm package the way that was being used a lot in 325. And there were a bunch of different ways that could be built, but the way that I built it was the Aegis Aurora version. Lots of people used other things. There's just... every node in Trickster is good, so if one of the nodes that was nerfed goes from good to unplayable for you, you just take one of the other ones instead. Okay, Elementalist. Let's start with the thing that got buffed and nerfed. Shaper of Storms. Now, it has shocks from your hits always increase damage taken by at least 25%. This is a pretty substantial improvement, but it is losing the 25% more effective lightning elements if the highest damage type is lightning. So this kind of, I think this is kind of a wash overall. I'm not certain on that. Shape of Winter, Ascendancy passive no longer has 50% more effective cold elements you inflict with hits for which the highest damage type is cold. Chills from your hits always reduce action speed by at least 15%, or your chills can reduce action speed by up to 40%. Instead, it causes enemies that are chilled by your hits to lessen their damage dealt by half of the chill effect. So that's off the Surfcaster, I think. And enemies chilled by your hits have damage taken increased by chill effect. So this is something that just changes the way that that's built. It wasn't really taken in the past. It was okay, but generally speaking, people found other things to do with it. But there's a solid setup there. And yeah, this is not going to work on indirect chills. They're inflicted by bone chill support. So that's not there anymore. Ultimately, this is still looking kind of fine. Powhit's got a question about the Shaper of Storms and the way that this at least 25% works. No, this applies after 100% increased effective ailments that you inflict. So if your shock would have been enough to inflict a 12% shock on the enemy, then that's doubled to 24%, and then that's increased to 25%. If it would have been 17%, that's doubled to 34%, and then the 24% floor doesn't matter. So that's the way that it will work. So Shaper of Flames is next, and this one's interesting in that enemies that are ignited by you convert 40% of their physical damage to fire. So this is defensive, but only after you've inflicted first blood. I don't like these conditional defenses that only apply after you've dealt damage, because they just aren't up a lot of the time. It is genuinely good, but I always found, like, I used to try and use, I think it's Pyroshock clasp, the belt, that felt like it was right on an elementalist, and it's just not, because monsters kill you that you don't recognize are there, and especially Eater of Worlds and Searing Exarch monsters are really good at doing that. So, Shaper of Flames, all your damage can and always does ignite. That's still there. Instead of the effect that was granting 25% more damage with ignite to inflict for hits with the greatest damage type being fire, it's losing that offensive side of things and it's gaining a defensive element instead. The defensive element is unreliable. So what this means is that Shaper of Flames narrowly is being nerfed. The rest of the Ascendancy is getting some buffs though. So overall, I think it's better because remember, you're getting the core golems are getting better, and you've got +2 to the number of maximum summoned golems, and that is on the 1.0. Let's go to Liege of the Primordial again, as I always forget which one of these has which effect. Liege of the Primordial. So, this is the one that grants the golems resummon 4 seconds after dying and 100% increased effective buffs. So you're getting 100% increased effective buffs, which is huge already. And then behind that, there was something else that is actually getting removed. So this was Elemancer, which was giving you a bunch of extra stuff on it. But what we're getting now is that this is changing so that you get the effect of elemental immunity on your golems, and you're getting the +2 maximum number of golems all in one package. So basically, the 2-point investment on golems is miles better than the 2-point investment was. It's a little bit worse than the 4-point investment used to be. But the thing that's significant is that you kind of didn't want to get... you kind of didn't want to go with the 4 points from there, because 4 points from there meant that you had to give up so much else. I think the golem branch is better now. It has lost some options, but you couldn't really justify taking 4 points into the golem branch usually. So all in all, it is better overall. All in all, it is a better setup. Elemancer is being replaced by a new notable, which is just a 2-pointer, and this is mana reservation efficiency and herald skill buff effect. Kind of conditional, like this is pushing in a different direction that the Elementalist used to go down. So it used to be the done thing on Elementalist that you would go physical spell and you would go try Herald with it. So you would go Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ash. And actually, sorry, Quad Herald, you'd take Herald of Purity as well. There's a bunch of support on the tree for this as well. So there's kind of a lot of stuff here. Especially with the boost to golems in general. I think... Actually, let's have a look at how much golem support there is now. So we're losing one of these notables, but golems. Oh, Chaos Golem got giga buffed. Chaos Golem is off the planet better now. Like, yeah, sure, it lost its PDR, but it is so good now. So we have the primordial stuff here. We have the Artemis Stone is just +1 golem. We have this silly thing which is not very good. Might be in some weird places, but it's the passive tree. You've got Golem Commander. That's the one I can never remember. So the Golem Commander cluster, I think, is 100% increased effective golems, and you get +1 golem from it. So you're going to 4 golems from no items, or 5 if you want to use an Artemis Stone. And in exchange for that, you're going to then get to like 300% baseline effect. So that means you're getting 51% chaos mitigation. You don't have any PDR, so physical is a problem at the moment. You've got to solve physical at some point. Then you've got all of these. What else do we have? Oh, there's a cluster jewel node as well, isn't there? 40% increased effective buffs on your golems, yeah. And also 10% increased damage. You definitely want Primordial Bond. So there's kind of a lot of stuff here. You can get a single golem burst here on items. Is that the only thing you can get? I might just expand this out. So we have all of the Eldritch mods, and I don't think there's anything else. Oh yeah, it's Crucible stuff is the other thing, yeah. Okay, cool. So there's nothing really else of note in itemization. It really is that the passive tree cluster, got to make sure that Golem Commander is still in the tree, that it's untouched. But Fizz Mitigation, you have a solution when you have already hit the enemy. But if you haven't already hit the enemy, then you are looking at only having your 40% conversion. I wonder if there's another way of doing this. I wonder if there's something else you can do that's more reliable. Like, I need to think on this a lot. I'm not convinced that I'm not convinced this 40% conversion to fire is all that good. Yeah, Incandescent Heart and Aegis is probably the way to go, because Incandescent Heart grants you damage as well, especially on the Elementalist. I think I'm sold with Incandescent Heart. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm not gonna rely upon the unconditional side of things. Oh, hang on, incandescent. Actually, no. The problem with incandescent heart though is that it is elemental only, right? It only saves you from. It only converts any of your elemental damage that you suffer. Like incandescent heart is good offensively, but it's not really good defensively. Hmm. So you've got to get a buffer. You like recovery is there with incandescent heart and Aegis. I guess you've got the buffer. Like if you can get enough aura effect, then you can probably manage somewhere out of it. Um, the question is, where are you getting the aura effect for this from? Anyways, a lot to think about here. Aegis also requires you to invest in attack block at least, and maybe attack and spell block, but you're not in an area of the tree that has any real support for attack block. So this is all going to be difficult. I feel like you have to sort of do a skill grimmage down, potentially not necessarily all the way to the bottom of the tree. Tree South has versatile combatant and stuff. You may not need that, but there's glancing blows is probably the way to go, because that is reasonably close. Anyways, there's also the option of just going full glass cannon too. Like honestly, glass cannon, best cannon. That's something an option there. Okay, that's where we're going to start out with thinking on that, but we haven't solved this problem yet. There's definitely there is a build there, but we're not sure what it is. Passive skill tree changes. Elemental Mastery for Inversion is being nerfed substantially. That's fine because it's still so good that you're going to take it everywhere. I think Leech Mastery is being nerfed. It's still so good you're going to take it always. The Link Mastery that granted elemental elements you inflict that are inflicted on you instead of link targets are now going to change to enemies in your link beams. Okay, that's not relevant. Wand Mastery that granted Unnerve on hit with wands has been replaced with a new mastery that grants 25% MRE for skills supported by Spellslinger. So the old mastery was good. The new mastery is good. They're both good in different ways. But the thing that we want to look at here is that Spellslinger setup we were talking about with the Guardian before. That's something that we'll have a look at. Now, casters and cold damage are being investigated further still, so there may be more masteries there. Uniques. Balance of Terror wasn't working. It's now going to work. Bitterbind point is now going to change around a bit. There's a bunch of hidden changes on this because they're changing what the Veiled mods can be. Arcanic Coolamak is similar. It's getting some changes. Devouring Diadem is getting some changes. That looks like a nerf on its own, but there's going to be all of those items are going to get new mods that they can roll when you unveil them. Ephemeral Edge is getting nerfed, not getting crushed, but like the rest of the build is getting hurt enough that the existing builds around Ephemeral Edge aren't going to work that well. And Mercenaries lot is going to be attached to Mercenaries and has a bunch of things on it that are pretty substantial. Kind of funny, like that extra mod is really funny on it. Nadir mode is going to cause spells to, it's just, Nadir mode is just better. Don't think you use it though still. Queen's Hunger, so that's one, just so that people know, Nadir mode and Apex mode both come from the unique heist, Breaking the Unbreakable. So it's Isla's quest chain. Queen's Hunger is now going to work a bit differently, but again, we don't know the rest of the package. And Relikesh's Impatience is getting nerfed completely, but it might still be good. You count as having maximum number of one type of charge rather than all of them, and they also have movement speed and immunity to Corrupted Blood. Basically, legacy versions of this item are going to be very, very good, but the new versions are probably still usable in some situations. The item is fine, it's just no longer going to be obnoxious. The other thing that's notable, I don't assume that you can convert from one version of this to another with a Divine Orb. So, yeah, basically, Relikesh, there's definitely going to be a difference in how good the various versions are to each other. The damaged ones are going to be better, but there'll be the odd use case for some of them. It'll have a niche. I'm happy with that. It's no longer going to be used on everything. The other thing is, this is a transformative change to day one bossing. Relikesh boots being nerfed is really going to change day one bossing a lot. Item changes. Divination Scarab of Plenty is getting a buff to it, and it's something that I think kind of already existed. It's just going to be clearer what's happening. This Divination Scarab is not quite good enough as it is, and I don't think a 25% more multiplier on how good it is enough. Titanic Scarab of Legend, interestingly, only one of them ever applied, but you could use two. More changes to Scarabs coming. Drop chance of Orbs of Regret has been lowered because gold is now a replacement for them. I want to play with this. I like the ability to respec with orbs. Honestly prefer it to gold. I guess we'll see on that front. Weapons and armor with multiple attribute requirements now have a lower chance to roll attribute modifiers. That is a buff. There'll be the odd situation in which this is not, but in general, this is a buff. So if you have a strength int, actually the biggest thing this is a buff to is grasping males. Let's start with that. But in general, this is going to be a boost to things that, like gloves will no longer be as likely to get. I mean, I guess there's the times that you want them. Yeah, there are the odd times that you do want these attribute mods, but in general, I think this is a boost. It's worth noting more Scarab changes are coming later. But yeah, there's the reduced attribute requirements mod is the main thing that will come up with this, but then there's that's always detrimental pretty much, but then there's a bunch of other things that are good. It's a good point that's being made that actually this is a nerf to getting pure intelligence on a necrotic armor. That is true. There's a nerf to that. That's a situation where it's a nerf. It might be for some types of stat stackers. It might be a nerf, but it's a pretty weird stat stacker, honestly, that wants hybrid gear. So yeah, mostly going to be a buff. Life and Mana Leech equipment. Life and Mana Leech modifiers on equipment, items, and jewels now roll as suffixes instead of prefixes. This is mostly going to be a buff. There'll be the odd situation in which it's not. Gloves, this might be worse on. So gloves, I could see you preferring the status quo. Other slots, I think this is just better. Maybe rings. Actually, it's going to be annoying this is going to be a nerf to ROG rings as well. Scepters, staves, daggers, and rune daggers and wands now roll attack modifiers less often. War staves, attack daggers are unaffected by this change. That's mostly going to be good. Wands with attack modifiers less often is messy. People just want different things on them, and that's the thing. I think it'd be nice if there were. I think the way they should do this is make it so that there's individual wands that don't have this effect, but only certain ones. It's gonna be messy. Yeah, Wanders, Wanders actually want spell damage as well. That's the thing. It's everything on this is weird. Everything on this is weird. Really, really weird. Saves can get more mana regenerate, and also crafting bench modifiers are higher. This is the biggest one here. Weapons can no longer roll resistance modifiers, whether they be things that you've applied via the crafting bench, whether they be synthesized or whether they be from the baseline mod pool. This is a buff. This is a huge buff. There's going to be the odd tiny case where you would rather the status quo, but in general, this is going to mean that Harvest is miles better when it comes to crafting weapons. And this is going to mean that there's going to be a bunch of things like you cannot roll attack mods or cannot roll caster mods, and then you can apply Harvest augments, and it's going to be fantastic there. So yeah, there'll be the odd situation in which these changes are going to be worse, but mostly they're better. Okay, life gain on life per enemy hit. Weapon modifiers are going to be better. Okay, so this is a strict buff because they're reducing the weighting of these mods. And 30 life per enemy hit is actually quite a lot. Life gain per enemy killed on weapons, jewelry, gloves, and quivers modifiers. There are 3 more tiers scaling to endgame. The weighting is nerfed so that you're less likely, that you're not going to see more of these mods, but when you do get them, they're going to be better. So again, this is going to be a buff in general. Same with weapons. Same with mana. All of that is an improvement. Chance to inflict ignite, freeze, and shock modifiers found on staves, scepters, and wands have been improved. They now have quite high numbers. I wonder if this applies to the Veiled Hybrid Fire Damage and Ignite Chance mod. That one I do tend to use. The rest of them are not so good. Redeemer's prefix modifier for physical damage suffered as cold no longer has a higher than expected value. Okay, so that's the non-elevated version. That's just something that's an oversight they've fixed. Veiled and crafting bench modifiers are granted AoE, area damage, proj speed, and proj damage, melee damage, and melee strike range. These hybrid mods are now on gloves rather than on amulets. Existing items are unaffected. This is... How do I feel about this? Amulet's probably a higher value slot, so... Yeah, I think that's probably slightly better. Not necessarily for everyone, though. And certain other mods that were rolling previously that were veiled, they are now... Oh, this is a bit of a nerf. They're still going to be available on helmets, but not on gloves. That one is worse than it used to be. Hybrid elemental damage veiled and crafting bench modifiers can now roll on amulets in addition to the other spots. So I believe that that's the dual element ones. They're just not so good, honestly, at endgame. Okay, so let's have a look at the divination card changes here. The one for Harvest Memories is being turned off after 1 league. Granted, it's been around for a year. It will come back again at some point in the future, but that one is gone. Bargain is now going to award a Flawless Breachstone. The Mayor is now going to award a Light of Meaning. Monochrome is granting a Veldo's Puzzle Box. That will be fun to see where that drops from and how rare it is. And actually, this would be interesting because we could test how rare Veldo's Puzzle Boxes are if we can find out. Okay, here's something we've got to do. The drop weighting of Veldo's Puzzle Boxes is dynamic, right? It changes as the additional pool of Veldo's maps changes. The more things that get added that add Mage Bloods, the rarer Veldo's boxes get. The more things that get added that drop things like what's the name of that super common set of boots? Chevron's Pace. Things like Chevron's Pace will make Veldo's Puzzle Box more common. So this pool changes over time, but we can compare the rarity of Veldo's Puzzle Box to the Divine Orb, potentially through the use of the monochrome card and the Faustus cost for it. So we'll see on this. In 3.25, they made some changes to Veldo's boxes where they nerfed each individual box. They changed the condensing factor. It's kind of like what they did with stacked decks way back in 3.6, where they nerfed each individual deck, but they made the game drop a lot more of them. A change that was loved at the time, and then people came to hate eventually, but it took a long time for that. So anyways, this will let us potentially work out just how rare Veldo's boxes are, which will be interesting. Sambodi's Wisdom now grants a double corrupted Tabula, which is always a meme. Tabula is just such a bad item now. And anyways, I don't like the name. Like, I feel like you have Humility, you have Vanity, and now you have Sambodi's Wisdom. It's kind of, it felt like there could have been something that was like a stronger incarnation of that transition from humility to vanity. I don't know, maybe vainglory isn't quite right, but what's like the most, is there a more extreme word for vanity? I don't know. Anyways, that's something I was thinking would be a thought there. You get a corrupted light of meaning jewel, and that's from Squandered Prosperity, which is the same person, I think, as the mayor. In terms of I think it was the same person that made them both. Hubris or narcissism, yeah. I feel like they would have been better names for that, but the name was locked though, so I guess someone's just wanted to have double corrupted tabula. Underground Forest is back and is awarding 10 Grand Eldritch Ichors. So you have, these are the third tier. This is like one below the top tier. Ruthless has a number of changes here that are pretty small. Nothing particularly substantial. This is basically the things that are being made are less impactful than they used to be. Let's say less impactful in the base game. Monster Balance. Asmiri monsters found around ritual altars no longer drop omens. Wah, wah, wah. Carrick mods. We discussed these a little bit during the live stream this morning, the first one. But basically, Settlers is going to be an option. Causes the area to contain ore deposits. Don't know how many, and it costs 3 chaos. Heist is getting better. Heist is now 6 chaos for 3 snuggle caches. That thing is going to be nuts. Absolutely, absolutely nuts. 2 additional Legion encounters on Legion probably makes it a bit better. Torment is getting quite a bit better, but probably doesn't get there because Torment's not as good as it used to be, which is good because Torment was horribly OP in the past. Essence is actually weaker than it was. It seems like it's better value. You get 4 for 3, 4 chaos for 3 instead of 6 chaos for 4, but Essence scales so much with Scarabs that actually the Essence Scarab of Ascent is part of what you're going to use, so that's not there. The things that are just replicated by a common Scarab, like Ultimatum, these are all disappointing. Ultimatum and Expedition, like they just shouldn't be in Carrack mods, honestly. I don't think they achieve anything. Focus channeling support we talked about before. The user interface changes. So we already knew about the map device. The control click on the crafting bench is getting in on day 1. That is good. Quick use currency for these things does not mention anything about lucid dreams, which doesn't really matter that much because it's so niche. Search text we already knew about. Attempting to build or upgrade a blight tower now pauses the game when using a controller. Oh, okay. So that's yeah, okay. I can understand why controller players might want that. Okay, when multiple league actions are bound to the same input, the game will attempt to trigger each action in order until one succeeds, rather than it only. Oh, okay. So that means that if you've got something where there's, well, yeah, that's an improvement. That's a weird one there, but it makes sense. Enemy and interactable targeting is now separate when using a controller. This is something we discussed in one of the previous daily videos. Updated various dialogue interfaces to use the same layout as more recent NPCs. Something that people don't know, actually, you can control click vendors, you can control alt click them, you can shift control click them, you can shift alt click them, do all sorts of combinations, and they do different things. I think from memory that control clicking Adia, the person who opens Heist, control click, I think from memory, opens a interface that you can just throw a contract straight into, and control alt clicking her, I think, is the one for opening a blueprint interface straight away. They all vary, all of the NPCs vary, but it's just really good. A bunch of other little things that we're known about. MTX from Dawn of the Hunt mystery box are added if you've got any of those yet. A couple of the things from the guillotine. The guillotine drops finisher could be kind of fun, but honestly, nothing's going to replace the Paladin supporter pack 1 for that. And then there's a couple other things there with little changes. Now, we have this section on bug fixes. Let's have a quick look through this. This is the end of it. After this, we are done, and I can go and get myself some lunch because I'm definitely hungry at the moment. Fix a bug where instill flasks were not being used when their conditions were met against the Trailmaster. Now, Svalin. Svalin was not working properly if it was being triggered by triggering Absolution. Note that Svalin is still around, and it appears that it still just drops the same way. So Svalin is going to be like dominant. Actually, something worth noting: there is a really good build that flew under the radar last league. It was played by a few people. It was the Svalin Elementalist that did a skill grimmage all the way to the bottom of the tree in order to pick up what's it called? Versatile Combatant. So it get capped. I think was it using versatile? I think it was using Versatile Combatant. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But anyways, it was using Story of the Vaal and Svalin, and it was using the what do you call it? Retaliation skill, Eviscerate to Ignite. It was really cool. It was one of those things that jumped out at me as one of my favorite builds that I didn't get around to playing in this league. Okay, Lino's Fall was not working properly with certain passive skills. We have chaining. Okay, just looking if there's anything that really jumped up. Where the gladiator. Well, that's interesting. Fix a bug where the gladiator's more than skill ascendancy passive was causing lucky blocks to be rolled an additional time. Okay, this is intriguing. I didn't think that it was bugged in my favor on that, and I did play it for a while. I did die plenty of times with it, but that was when your lucky blocks weren't active. It was actually bugged. Okay, I hadn't seen it because it didn't feel like it was working. Okay, that's certainly more reasonable than it was, but it's still good. It's still really good. It is a massive bug. I'm surprised it lasted the whole league. Fix a bug where you would, yeah, like that's a trivial bug. Modifier tags. Just looking if there's anything here that jumps out as something. Twist of Fate Atlas Keystone passive was not functioning correctly with tier 17 corrupted maps. That I did not know that was the case. Fix a bug where discharge used by monsters had no area of effect and as a result no damage. Ouch, that's going to be scary. Because those things are nasty. Oh yeah, the Blight Scarab of Blooming was being a bit dubious as to whether it was working or not for certain circumstances. Just looking if there's anything else. Oh, the Relic of the Pact. The Relic of the Pact Tempering Orb bug is fixed. That was something that got picked up by someone in Discord that I was chatting with in Discord. They found one that was really funny there. Fix a bug where you could have inaccessible items in the 5th and 6th map device slots if you'd left items in there when migrating your character and did not have access to them in the slots you have migrated to. Okay, so that's the sort of that's like one of those weird corner case things. Fixed a bug where the ritual deferral cost could display an astronomical number, i.e. integer underflow, when the deferral cost was reduced too much. Fixed a few cases where corrupted items were dropping identified instead of unidentified. We like them dropping, I mean, not for boss drops that are always corrupt, but when it, like in general, we want them to drop identified. It's more fun. Except for things where there's a huge amount of variance. Well, there's a huge amount of variance, I'd rather have them drop identified. Fix a bug where some monsters weren't always receiving the correct amount of damage reduction. This could mean anything. Fix a bug where Uhtred could drop a divination card in Ruthless. That's intriguing. King's portals or something. Yeah, like a bunch of things opening in wrong spots. Okay, let's just press refresh at this point. And what has changed, if anything? Hex Blast. Oh. I think Hex Blast and Hex Blast of Contradiction and Mines might just be getting taken out the back and shot. Now has a 2-second cooldown time with 3 uses. Base radius of 3.2 meters, so it's better than it used to be, but 150% more damage with... So it's basically better than it used to be, except that's forced to be self-cast. Okay, this is why I refresh things. Hey, this is why I refresh things. And the Hex Blast Contradiction got exactly the same thing. Okay, cool. So anyways, Hex Blast Mines is Like, that just means that the Sanctum build is now Penance Brand of Dissipation, right? And that puts Hexblast in a really weird spot. Like, can it be your only skill? I don't think it can. 2-second cooldown time is long, right? It's like... Hexblast Ignite. Honestly, I think this is a fine change because Hexblast Mines had it coming. It had something coming. I don't know what it need, whether this is the exact right change or not, but it definitely had problems with it. It's now better than it used to be when you self-cast it, but it can't be your only skill now. That's the thing I don't like about it. I just feel like they should have done something else with it. Like, it's... Yeah, Penance Brand of Dissipation got nerfed, but in 324, but not enough. Like, it was nerfed from S++ tier to S tier for bossing and for Sanctum. Like, Hexblast Mines is like Hexblast Mines has things that are stronger out than this. I just want to know, yeah, is Hexblast playable now? I'm not sold on it at all. Anyways, like, I kind of expected Hexblast to get nerfed. I'm not surprised by that. All that said, I think this is basically the end of everything that we wanted to discuss here. So I kind of want to wind up at this point by going through some of the key highlights quickly. So the biggest highlight is going to be 3 new Pinnacle bosses, a new endgame storyline, and also a number of things that are going to address some of the biggest balance outliers, i.e. the broken stuff in the Settlers League, the things that were getting stale for a lot of us. I don't think, with the exception of the nerf to Hexblast Mines, I don't think anything has been deleted into unplayability. Hexblast Mines has been, but that always sort of felt like it was not working exactly as intended. There'll be the new maps, definitely. Yeah, there's the tier 16 maps that are influenced by ZANA and can roll tier 17 modifiers, but are also going to have a bunch of other things associated with them. The new crafting systems are going to be outshone by recombination mostly. There will be uses for the new crafts though, just that recombination is going to be stronger in general. This is also going to have a bit of an impact on the longevity of ROG. ROG will be as good as he always is early on in the league, but he's going to fall off really quick. Splitting Steel is dead, yes. Hierophant, the mana Hierophant has a build around it still, but it's a lot worse than it used to be. Elementalist is getting buffed a lot. Not everything is a buff in it, but overall, the whole package is a buff. And the Hierophant, the other thing that really stands out is the Hierophant Stormburst Totems really stands out as something that's really strong. Otherwise, there's a bunch of new things that I can't in good conscience recommend that you build around until we know whether this is accessible or not. Amity's Embrace. This thing is crazy strong. It is not for Ignite. It is for instant application fire damage, but it's crazy strong, but it has a huge drawback on it. This is not something that you can use lightly. Splitting Steel is only affected at endgame. One of the Prophet is looking crazy. This is something that definitely looks like it will be a lot of fun, but it is from Pinnacle bosses, so not going to be super easy to get. All these new crafting orbs outshone by recombination unless they pull back on recombination a little bit, I think. At least that's my first thought. We'll have to test it. Maybe they've got the numbers really high on it. The King's March stuff is looking like it's going to be good, and Betrayal is going to be fantastic all league. Betrayal is going to be fantastic all league because of these All Flame members. There's going to be one of the best mechanics around to run. In terms of stuff that's come up in the patch notes that we weren't necessarily expecting, so there's the buffs to things that we were definitely expecting. There's not, there's a lot of modest size buffs to skill gems that are not explosively big, but that are a factor. The other question that a lot of people, I think, are misinterpreting this new crafting system. I just want to quickly go back to that because probably the single biggest thing that's coming up a lot. People are thinking, can you just keep re-spamming these orbs? The answer is no, you can't, because the Orb of Remembrance can only be used if the item is scoured. So you have to start over. If you have to start over on that. And yeah, Lightning Strike actually probably undernerfed in this. It's still going to be very good, but not on the Trickster. Trickster is good, Lightning Strike is good. The two do not work together as well as they did in the past. They might still work together, but the builds will look... At least, the thing that's going to be good is that if you are going to play Trickster Lightning Strike in 3.25, in 3.26, it's going to look unrecognizable from 3.25 builds. So that's fine. The other thing of note is that memory lines are gone, but they are going to remain in the game in Kirak missions, because that's come up just in chat. A couple of people have been curious about that. So things like the Harvest Feast, that'll come up with Kirak missions now. So there'll be a bunch of things there. Ultimately, there is also things like Vivid Vultures do come up in there. Oh yeah, King's March as a mechanic has come up in chat. I've mentioned this a bit, like that if Mirror Shards are still available, I feel like everything is kind of solved and people are just gonna, like... There needs to be a good gold sink, and King's March will work as one, but the farmers are just not fun, I think. The farmers are just not fun. That's my problem with them. The map devices are fun, but they're so much worse than the farmers that it's kind of messy. And we have the other thing that's really cool. There's an Atlas Notable that changes the way that you gain a lot of King's March related resources. And that looks like it could be really good, but I've got to think about it. I've really got to think about it. Anyways, I am going to wind it up here. I'm going to leave it there. My plans for the rest of the day, I'm going to put out a video that is a much condensed version of this stream, and that will go live at some point. That will be my day 12, what do you call it? My day 12 summary. That will go up at some point. Otherwise, though, I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlorbs have interesting results. I'm off to get some lunch. Have fun, and I'll see you around.